Chapter 1209. In the face of Hyojin's inquiry, Ningxi did not realize what he would get next and just nodded in confusion. Hyojin smiled slightly and then pointed to the operating table. Lie down. Ningxi quickly lay down on the cold operating table and couldn't help but ask curiously, "Sensei, did you really crack the caged bird?" Hyojin shook his head. "The caged bird is far more troublesome than you think. I didn't completely crack it, I just found a way to temporarily suppress it." With that said, Hyojin communicated with the giant Tenseigan in the Sky Fortress and instilled a pure Tenseigan chakra into Ningxi's body. Huh? Feeling a large amount of gentle Tenseigan chakra flowing into his body, Ningxi was surprised. This feeling was very comfortable and warm. It made him not feel tired at all, and his body seemed to be filled with endless vitality. Then, Hyojin used the authority of the giant Tenseigan to temporarily suppress the caged bird on Ningxi's forehead. In an instant, the light green, caged bird curse mark on Ningxi's forehead like the Tenseigan chakra began to fade gradually and finally disappeared without a trace. Ningxi, who had been restrained by the caged bird, felt relaxed and free at this moment. He opened his eyes wide and his face was full of shock. Sensei, you lifted the caged bird for me?" Kuroto replied indifferently, "I told you, it's just suppression." Ningxi did not struggle with the suppression or lifting. He slowly raised his hand to touch his forehead while feeling the freedom of the caged bird. After preparing everything, Hyojin introduced the operation to Ningxi. This operation is divided into two parts. The first part is to remove your eyes and the second part is to implant my eyes. But you don't have to worry, I will take good care of the eyes you have removed, and I will replace them for you in the future. Ningxi on the operating table nodded a little nervously. An eye transplant surgery was a very frightening thing to him. But thinking that his teacher could even do the taboo of resurrection and even suppress the caged bird, in front of these shocking things, eye transplant surgery was not so important. After briefly mentioning the surgical process to let Ningxi have an idea in his heart, Hyojin stopped talking nonsense and directly started the operation. For the current Hyojin, eye removal surgery is a minor surgery that can be done perfectly with his eyes closed. So before Ningxi could react, he had already removed the Byakugan. Immediately after, he opened the Tenseigan and observed the Byakugan that had been removed. As he expected, the purity of Ningxi's Byakugan was very high, far higher than his Byakugan before the gene injection. In addition, there were obvious traces of the caged bird curse seal on the Byakugan. The caged bird curse seal really entered the body, spirit body, and even chakra at the same time, Hyojin secretly sighed. Because as a dirt soil body, there was also the caged bird curse seal on his forehead. This curse seal seemed to be completely bound to him, and even death couldn't remove it. One must know that engraving the curse seal into the brain is already a very advanced method in the ninja world. Even the roots of the Danzo only engraved the curse seal on the tongue to prevent members from leaking information. The caged bird curse seal entered the brain, spirit body, and chakra at the same time. This kind of control is completely seamless, leaving no flaws. Therefore, for hundreds of years, no branch member has been able to successfully remove the caged bird curse seal. Even Hyojin and the previous Hyuga Aoki were barely able to keep themselves unaffected. While putting Ningxi's Byakugan into another special nutrition tank, Hyojin said, "Now I'm going to implant my eyes in you, get ready." "Yes." Ningxi agreed. Soon, Hyojin took out his Tenseigan from the nutrition tank. At this time, his Tenseigan has returned to the shape of an ordinary eyeball. From the appearance, it doesn't look much different from ordinary Byakugan. Hyojin, who has made a decision, didn't hesitate too much. After taking a deep look at his Tenseigan, he immediately began the transplant surgery. Like the previous removal surgery, the transplant surgery was also very smooth. In just a few minutes, Hyojin completed the surgery. Afterward, Hyojin restrained the relaxed expression on his face and stared at Ningxi on the operating table with the Tenseigan, and the expression on his face also became serious. For him, the surgery itself has never been a problem. The real problem is whether Ningxi can withstand his Tenseigan after the transplant, and because there is no precedent to analyze, he can't make accurate speculations before the transplant. But in his opinion, he and Ningxi are from the same family, and their bloodlines are similar, plus Ningxi's talent is one of the best in the family, and he is at the age of vitality, plus the blessing of unveil. He should be able to withstand his Tenseigan. Slightly nervous, Hyojin swallowed non-existent saliva, then asked, "How do you feel? Is there any discomfort in your body?" Ningxi slowly opened his eyes at this time, a little puzzled. What discomfort? Obviously, until this moment, he didn't know what Hyojin transplanted into him. He thought it was Hyojin's Byakugan, so he didn't think about other aspects at all. Hyojin breathed a sigh of relief and secretly said, "It seems that he has entered a dormant state on his own initiative." Suddenly, Ningxi on the operating table screamed in pain, and then his body curled up like a shrimp ball. Hyojin frowned. "What's wrong?" My eyes hurt." Niji screamed as he convulsed. Hyojin immediately ordered, "Quick, open the unveil." The painful Ningxi quickly opened the unveil, according to Hyojin's instructions, and then a large amount of Byakugan chakra that he had stored before was released from the seal. With the lifting of the unveil, Ningxi's pain was reduced to a certain extent. He panted and asked, "Sensei, how could this happen? I feel that the eyes you transplanted into me are about to tear my brain apart. In front of it, my body is like a piece of white paper wrapped in a flame, and it may be burned at any time." Hyojin was a little embarrassed. It wasn't like this before. The 3rd chapter is here. Continue to write. There should be a 4th chapter in the evening. In another hour, it will be April. Please ask for a guaranteed monthly ticket for April in advance. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 12:10. There is no doubt that this pair of Tenseigan is very conscious when it is in Hyojin's body. It will carefully take care of Hyojin's body. Even if it suppresses itself and lets itself fall into dormancy, it will not cause a serious burden to Hyojin's body. But after transplanting it to Ningxi, this consciousness seems to have disappeared. It had finally revealed its 6th Daos level, displaying a power that was not inferior to the Eye of Reincarnation. In fact, it was even more powerful than the Eye of Reincarnation. Ningxi's current situation is obviously that he can't bear the burden of the Tenseigan, and there is a mutual rejection between his eyes and his body. And in this confrontation of rejection, Ningxi's body is simply no match for the Tenseigan. The two are not on the same level at all, so Ningxi feels great pain. Even Ningxi can't do it? Hyojin is a little helpless. If even Ningxi can't do it, then you, who has a worse aptitude, may not be able to bear his Tenseigan. At this time, due to the complete release of the unveil, Niji's condition was slightly better. Drenched in sweat, he covered his head while gasping for breath and said, "Teacher, how can your eyes be so scary? It's like the sun, it's so hot that I can't bear it, I feel like my head is going to crack." Hyojin replied casually while thinking about countermeasures. "Didn't I mention it to you before? My eyes are called Tenseigan. Oh, you can think of it as the advanced form of Byakugan." Turn. Tenseigan? Ningxi was completely stunned as if he was struck by lightning. He always thought that Byakugan has no advanced form. At this time, after listening to Hyojin's explanation, he realized that Byakugan is the same as the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. It also has an advanced form. And his sensei already has this kind of powerful and terrifying eye called Tenseigan. In hindsight, he touched his eye socket. "Did you transplant the Tenseigan to me?" Hyojin nodded and said solemnly, "Yes, but now it seems that you can't withstand my eyes." As he spoke, he rubbed his chin and muttered to himself, "Maybe I should try transplanting an eye first. Sigh, maybe no one can withstand my Tenseigan." Frankly speaking, Ningxi's strong rejection was far beyond his expectations. He thought that Ningxi was the best candidate, but now it seems that only Otsutsuki Samurai, whose bloodline on the moon is closer to Otsutsuki Himura, can bear his Tenseigan. In addition, Nagato, Xianglin, and other descendants of the Sage of the Six Paths, although their physique is tyrannical and their vitality is amazing, because they don't have the Byakugan chakra, they may not be able to withstand his Tenseigan. Listening to Hyojin's mutterings, Ningxi was both surprised and self-abased. When he learned that the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan also had an advanced form, he felt joy from the bottom of his heart, thinking that with hard work in the future, he may also be able to awaken the Tenseigan. But when he learned that he was not even qualified to bear his teacher's Tenseigan, his heart suddenly turned to ashes, and he clenched his fists in pain. Damn it, how can I be so incompetent? Soon, the effect of Ningxi's Een seal began to fade. Kuroto hasn't been practicing the Een seal for a long time. Coupled with the fact that his daily training tasks are extremely heavy, the amount of chakra that can be stored in the Een seal is not much, so the accumulation of chakra in the Een seal is very limited. And as the effect of Een seal faded, the great pain hit Ningxi's whole body again. But this time, he didn't cry out in pain, but clenched his teeth, tightly grasped the edge of the operating table with his hands, and used his will to resist the pain of his body and spirit body. It's useless. Hyojin on the side sighed faintly. Ningxi gritted his teeth and said, "Sensei, I can definitely help." Hyojin shook his head and said calmly, "If you can't, then you can't. It has nothing to do with your will." Ningxi still didn't give up. On his flushed cheeks, blue veins bulged high. Hyojin turned his head and glanced at the instrument that monitors Ningxi's physical signs. It shows that Ningxi's heartbeat and blood pressure are abnormal, and even his cell activity is soaring rapidly. This shows that Ningxi's body is trying to adapt to the Tenseigan, but even at this point, his body still can't bear the burden of the Tenseigan. Hyojin advised, "Give up, it's meaningless to persist like this. If you go on like this, you will die." With that, he took out a tranquilizer and was ready to inject it into Ningxi's body to help Ningxi calm the abnormalities of his body, and then remove the newly implanted Tenseigan for Ningxi. He now realized that his Tenseigan may have completely surpassed Madara Uchiha's Rinnegan in terms of level. In today's ninja world, except for himself, no one is qualified to touch his Tenseigan unless it is the real Otsutsuki. Because even if you get it, you can't control it. And at this time, he realized a little bit that Uchiha Madara needed someone to help warm his eyes, but when he looked up, he found that no one could bear it. However, just as Hyojin was about to inject the tranquilizer, Ningxi, who was already a little confused, was still murmuring, "Sensei, I can definitely help. I don't want to be a bird in a cage all the time. I also want to be like Sasuke, like Naruto, to pursue my dreams freely." Listening to Ningxi's murmur, Hyojin's thumb stopped pushing the injection, and a trace of hesitation flashed on his face. It's really troublesome." Soon, Hyojin spat lightly, then quickly removed the gourd artifact from his waist and opened the seal on the gourd artifact. Crash! In an instant, a majestic Ryomai chakra overflowed from the gourd artifact. At this time, Hyojin said to Ningxi, who was gradually losing consciousness on the operating table, "You only have one chance. If you can become the Ryomai's Jinchuriki, you may be able to bear my Tenseigan. Now I'm giving you this opportunity. It's up to you whether you can grasp it or not." Then, Hyojin told Ningxi how to sign a contract with the Ryomai, and then retreated to the side. If Ningxi can successfully sign a contract with the Ryomai in such an extreme state and become the Ryomai's Jinchuriki, then he is qualified to bear the Tenseigan. If he can't do it, then Hyojin can't do anything about it. Ningxi didn't have a choice in the previous fates. But this time, as his teacher, Hyojin put the opportunity to control his own fate in front of him. Fourth, thank you to the students who gave yesterday. Thank you everyone. Chapter 12:11. I feel that my performance is not bad. So, please support me with your monthly votes, and vote for me with your guaranteed monthly vote. In the coming April, I will strive to maintain this state. Everyone's support is the biggest motivation for me to update, so please continue to support me. Requesting monthly votes. Requesting recommendation votes. Requesting subscriptions. Requesting rewards. The above is all serious. This is not an April Fool's joke. Oh, intersection. Oh, Naruto's world in the eyes of reincarnation, requesting monthly votes at the beginning of the month. Currently typing, please wait a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 12:12. Although his consciousness was fading, Ningxi did not give up. After hearing Hyojin's whisper, he forced himself to form a seal to form a contract with the dragon vein. Even if he was fully conscious, he might not be able to form a contract like this. But he understood that this was the only chance he had to control his own fate. He did not want to be a useless person, and he did not want to be a bird trapped in a cage forever. Therefore, although his hands were trembling, they were extremely determined. Hyojin, who had retreated to the side, watched this scene silently. Giving Ningxi a chance to form a contract with the dragon vein was the limit of what he could do. After all, he was not at Samsara level yet, so he could not directly bestow power like the Samsara deity. As for the dragon vein, he did not deal with it on a whim. During the ceremony, he realized that his contract with the dragon vein had already affected his breakthrough to Samsara level. This was because this kind of contract, similar to the human pillar strength, would cause his connection with the dragon vein to be too close, causing his spiritual body and chakra to not be pure enough. This situation did not affect him much in the first and second stages of the ceremony, but when it came to the third stage, which involved raising the level of life, the effects gradually emerged. One of the most direct effects was that the overly close contract would cause a part of the dragon vein's chakra to unknowingly participate in the crucial chakra fusion. And the chakra fusion in Hyojin's body was carefully calculated by him. There was a very subtle balance between the different attributes of the chakra. Once other uncontrollable chakra entered, it would interfere and even break this balance. Secondly, this kind of contract, similar to the human pillar strength, involved the soul, and the dragon vein's chakra was too large, which would affect Hyojin's spiritual body in many ways. These effects were not necessarily bad. For example, when Hyojin was under an illusion, the dragon vein could invade Hyojin's body on its own and dispel the illusion for Hyojin. But at the same time, this would cause Hyojin's spirit body to be impure. Purity was what allowed Hyojin to go even further than Hirako and Danzo. It was precisely because he had solved the problem of soul impurities and body rejection that he was able to easily complete the first stage, the second stage, and the third stage that no one had ever explored before. That was why, for the sake of purity, he had to give up his identity as the human pillar of the dragon bloodline and use his pure body to break through the bloodline succession net. This was also the reason why he did not immediately sign a new contract with the dragon vein after being tainted Earth reincarnation. If it were not for Ningxi's stubbornness, he might have handed the dragon's vein over to Xiang Lin or Bai, allowing one of them to become the new dragon's vein human pillar. If Xiang Lin became the human pillar of the dragon bloodline, then she could better use the Rinnegan and use the natural reincarnation technique to resurrect Hyojin as soon as possible. If Bai became the human pillar of the dragon bloodline, with Bai's talent in controlling natural energy, he could almost exert the full power of the dragon bloodline. At that time, he could become an important source of chakra in Hyojin's ritual. Of course, these ideas were disrupted by the changes in front of him. Just as Kuroto's thoughts were gradually drifting away, a roar suddenly erupted from the gourd. It resounded throughout the entire operating theater and shook the surgical instruments on the trays to the side, causing them to clatter. Hyojin's eyes suddenly became cold. He knew that this was the reaction of the dragon bloodline after being stimulated by the contract, and whether this contract could be concluded or not would soon be clear. If the dragon bloodline accepted the contract, then Ningxi would become the second human pillar of the dragon bloodline after Hyojin. If the dragon bloodline refused to accept, then Hyojin must immediately take action and remove the Tenseigan for Ningxi. Ningxi also seemed to be aware of this. He endured the pain and exhaustion and looked nervously at the gourd. At this time, a dragon-shaped chakra phantom slowly emerged from the gourd, looking at Ningxi from a distance, and then looked at Hyojin, who retreated to the side. Hyojin nodded at the dragon-shaped phantom. The dragon-shaped phantom hesitated for a while, then suddenly plunged into Ningxi's body. Ningxi was startled for a moment, and then immediately showed a trace of joy on his face that had been suppressed. Immediately afterward, a large number of dragon bloodline chakra poured into his body, and then it was greedily absorbed by the Tenseigan. After absorbing enough dragon bloodline chakra, the Tenseigan finally calmed down. "Sensei, did I succeed?" As soon as his voice fell, Ningxi fell on the operating table. Looking at Ningxi, who fainted because of extreme fatigue, Hyojin said with emotion, "This kid is more reckless than me." 3 days later, Ningxi, who woke up, found Hyojin outside the cave and hurriedly saluted. "Sensei, thank you." Hyojin said, "You don't have to thank me. You risked your life for this opportunity, and I didn't give you the Tenseigan. I just asked you to help me nourish it temporarily. There is no need to thank me." Ningxi quickly promised, "Please rest assured, I will definitely protect your Tenseigan." "Protect it?" With a smile, Hyojin curled his lips and said, "You'd better think about how to protect yourself. Because they are from the same family and are related by blood, Hyojin and Ningxi's gene sequences are similar. The only difference is the amount of recessive special gene sequences turned on. Therefore, other people who have transplanted Tenseigan only have the power of Tenseigan at most, but Niji has transplanted Tenseigan. It is possible that because of the stimulation of Tenseigan, the recessive special gene sequence in his body will be activated. And this is not only a great opportunity but also a great crisis. The principle is similar to the injection of genetic fluid. The only difference is that the method of stimulation is changed from genetic fluid to Tenseigan. This is actually an unexpected discovery by Hyojin when he examined Ningxi's body in the past 2 days. The reason is probably because of the previous ritual that caused his Tenseigan to step into the 6th-path level, and has some abilities that even he doesn't understand. In short, this pair of Tenseigan, which is connected to his bloodline, has become one of the strongest treasures in the shinobi world today. And the danger of genetic recombination caused by the activation of special gene sequences is self-evident. It is definitely an overly optimistic statement to describe it with the word 9 out of 10. The reason why Hyojin didn't delve into the genetic fluid is because it has nothing to do with technology. It is purely because the genetic recombination after activating all the special gene sequences is too dangerous. He has simulated it many times through the instrument, and the success rate is less than 0.1%. In other words, even if all the current Hyuga clansmen gather together to use the genetic fluid, there is a high probability that they will be wiped out and no one will succeed. The first update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 12-13. Of course, there is still a difference between the stimulation of Tenseigan and the stimulation of gene fluid. When the gene fluid is injected, It will violently activate all the special gene sequences and immediately detonate genetic recombination, so that the body will either be reborn or die in the continuous disintegration. The stimulation of the Tenseigan is more like an unconscious behavior, so the degree of stimulation is slightly lighter, and it will not have an immediate effect like the gene serum. It's just that the better the talent, the more obvious the stimulation effect will be, so Ningxi was in a coma for 3 days. After taking a serious look at Ningxi, Hyojin asked, "How do you feel?" "Very good." The excitement on Ningxi's face was hard to hide. Hyojin's Tenseigan's vision is much clearer than his Byakugan's. It's like the resolution of the monitor has been raised, and the whole world is clear. In addition to the most basic improvement of insight, he also faintly found that his chakra has undergone obvious changes. Whether it is quantity or quality, there has been a clear growth. "Then let's try the pupillary technique." Hyojin pointed to the forest in the distance. "Yes." Ningxi was immediately eager to try. He has always been looking forward to getting the same powerful pupillary technique as Sasuke, so this moment is the moment he has been dreaming of. Facing the forest, he took a deep breath and then slowly raised his arms. After enduring the Tenseigan, he obtained the most basic Tenseigan pupillary technique, rain manipulation, so he can try to use it without Hyojin's guidance. Soon, he used all his strength to launch rain manipulation. In an instant, a violent repulsive force spewed out from his palm, forming an invisible storm, sweeping the forest in front of him. Rumble, the violent storm carried boundless chi waves, emitting a series of deafening roars. The forest in front of him disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye in this storm, as if a charcoal drawing on a canvas was erased by an eraser. This? As the initiator, Ningxi suddenly froze in place, and his face was full of astonishment. Hyojin couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. "Why are you so forceful?" Looking at the lush green forest that had turned into a desolate wasteland, Ningxi was shocked and scared. He stammered, I didn't know it would turn out like this." Hyojin held his forehead with his hand and said speechlessly, "I asked you to try your ocular technique, not to demolish my home. Now that you've done this, I have no choice but to abandon my base." Ningxi quickly apologized. "I'm very sorry." "Forget it." Waving his hand, Hyojin said, "It's hard to avoid accidents on the first try. I've made many mistakes in the past, but you have to remember that you are the one controlling the power, not the other way around. Don't lose yourself." "I will remember it." Ningxi nodded seriously. At this time, Hyojin glanced at the forest that Ningxi had just swept in the distance, and he was secretly surprised. To be honest, he didn't expect that the power of Ningxi's rain manipulation would be so strong. This is almost comparable to the power of his full strength when he was alive. And Ningxi has just adapted to the state of the Tenseigan. Obviously, it is impossible to achieve the effect he had when he was alive. This undoubtedly shows that the ocular power of the Tenseigan has improved after the ritual, and it has improved a lot. The technique you just used is called rain manipulation. It is a technique that manipulates repulsion and attraction. It can repel nearby objects and attract distant objects. Immediately, Hyojin explained to Ningxi while actually demonstrating rain manipulation, slowly sucking a gravel on the ground in the distance into his palm. Ningxi suddenly said, "Sensei, this is the technique that the Akatsuki leader used to destroy the village, right?" Hyojin nodded and said, "Well, the Rinnegan also has a similar ability, but the repulsion and attraction of the Rinnegan are two different techniques, called Shinra Tensei and 10,000 Mammoth Tensei respectively, but the principle is similar to our technique." Ningxi immediately said, "The leader of Amatsukami seems to have a similar technique." "Ahem," after coughing twice, Hyojin said, "Next, I will teach you an ocular technique unique to the Tenseigan. I call it Tenseigan Chakra Mode! Tenseigan Chakra Mode? Ningxi's mind moved, and his mind immediately thought of Naruto's 9 Tails Chakra Mode, CU's Sage Mode, and 4 Generations Lei Ying's Thunder Release Chakra Mode. Watch carefully. After explaining, Hyojin demonstrated the Tenseigan Chakra Mode hand seals. Ningxi imitated Hyojin's hand seals, and then at the end, he shouted softly, "Tenseigan Chakra Mode, open!" Voila! In an instant, a soft Tenseigan chakra wrapped Ningxi's whole body, lifted his body, and slowly floated. This? Ningxi was at a loss for a moment. He was not surprised by the magic of Tenseigan Chakra Mode, but his current state reminded him of a person, a legend of the ninja world. Hyojin at this time curled his lips and smiled. "You can succeed on the first try, not bad." Ningxi, who was floating in the air under the Tenseigan Chakra Mode, looked at Hyojin in a daze and stammered, "Sensei, you are the leader of Amatsukami Yama?" "Yes." Hyojin nodded casually. At this moment, the deeds of the leader of Amatsukami, Yama, flashed in Ningxi's mind one by one. He was shocked to find that the ninja world has been under the control of Byakugan. Those Homasubi of Amatsukami who have Manjikyu Sharingan are all subordinates of Hyojin. So the Sharingan has always been under Byakugan, it's just that I didn't know. Ningxi was completely confused. The concept that he has established for more than a decade was shattered at this moment. The powerful Uchiha and the powerful Manjikyu Sharingan, he thought, were all subordinates of Hyojin, who has the Byakugan. And the Byakugan that he thought has been eliminated by the times turns out to be hiding a terrifying power that can suppress the entire ninja world and defeat the leader of Akatsuki, who has the Rinnegan Eye. Landing on the ground, Ningxi stared at Hyojin, opened his mouth and asked, "Sensei, is this true? Is all this real?" Hyojin was speechless. Isn't it just creating an organization with only a few people? Is it worth making such a fuss? Ningxi then asked, "Are you really a sage?" Hyojin was even more speechless. "I told you long ago, I'm a dead man now." The second update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly vote. Also, I would like to thank the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 12-14. Dead. The excitement on Ningxi's face suddenly disappeared as if a bucket of cold water was poured over him. Even now, he still can't adapt to the fact that Hyojin is dead. Deep in his heart, he still thinks that it's just a joke by his sensei, but since he already has the Tenseigan, he knows very well that the state of Hyojin in front of him is very strange. Immediately, Ningxi asked worriedly, "Sensei, can you really be resurrected?" Hyojin didn't explain much and just nodded gently. Suddenly, Ningxi thought of something, and his expression suddenly froze as he said in surprise, "If you are dead, then who will stop the leader of Akatsuki, Nagato?" Everyone knows that the only one who can stop the leader of Akatsuki, Nagato, is the leader of Amatsukami, Yama. Now that he learned that the leader of Amatsukami, Nagato, is his sensei, Hyojin, and that Yama is dead, Ningxi suddenly realized that the balance in the shinobi world seems to have been broken, and no one can stop the leader of Akatsuki, Nagato. Hyojin was a little relieved. "It's good that you can think of this yourself, so the news of my death must be kept secret until the moment of my resurrection." After realizing the seriousness of the matter, Ningxi nodded hurriedly. Once the news of Amatsukami's leader Yama's death is leaked, the Akatsuki may immediately take action, and at that time, the shinobi world will usher in another catastrophe. Next, Hyojin began to guide Ningxi in condensing and using the truth-seeking ball. The biggest advantage of Tenseigan Chakra Mode, compared to other modes, is that it can bypass the limit of the realm and condense the truth-seeking ball that can only be condensed by a complete six-path shinobi. And this can be said to be the key to the Tenseigan Chakra Mode, crushing other modes. Because apart from the Tenseigan Chakra Mode, there is no other method that can allow a ninja to instantly cross the boundary of six-path, which defines the level of life, and allow an ordinary person to temporarily possess the power of Sixth-Path, becoming a pseudo-Sixth-Path with the full combat power of Sixth-Path. Looking at the black ball floating in front of him, Ningxi was both surprised and delighted. Teacher, are these the truth-seeking balls that symbolize the power of immortals? Yes. Nodding, Hyojin urged, don't just stand there. Maintaining the truth-seeking jade is a heavy burden for you, so don't waste any more time. Hurry up and try the golden wheel reincarnation explosion. Yes. Ningxi quickly responded, then held his breath and activated the truth-seeking ball according to Hyojin's instructions. In an instant, the truth-seeking ball, that was floating beside Ningxi, rushed into the palm of Ningxi's right hand. Soon after, it transformed into a golden sword that was as dazzling as the sun. Hyojin pointed to the wasteland that had become ruins in the distance. Give it a try. Ningxi did not hesitate and immediately slashed down with the sword. Swish, the golden light drew an arc in the air, and then disappeared into the ground. Soon after, a roar broke out. After the smoke and dust dispersed, Ningxi saw a deep gully in front of him. There were many cracks extending from the edge of the gully. It seemed as if the earth had been chiseled open by something. Is this the power of immortals? Niji gasped for breath as he stared at the destruction he had caused with a dull look in his eyes. Beside him, Hyojin said noncommittally, the technique you just used is called the Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. It's a high-level use of the truth-seeking jade. It can easily break through the control limit of the truth-seeking jade, which is only 70 meters. Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion, Ningxi muttered softly. Hyojin continued, its power will increase according to the number of truth-seeking jades used. What you used just now was the weakest level, which could only destroy one street. And if we throw in more truth-seeking balls, even the moon hanging high above our heads will be sliced in half. Just listening to Hyojin's introduction, Ningxi was already looking forward to it. On the other hand, there's another technique called the Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. If the Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion fuses the suction force with the truth-seeking jade and uses the suction force to converge all the power into a line, then uses the line to break the surface. Then, the Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion fuses the repulsive force with the truth-seeking jade to form a storm that can overturn everything. Hyojin casually introduced another technique of the Tenseigan chakra mode. Hearing this, Ningxi wanted to give it a try. But when he tried to condense another truth-seeking jade, his body staggered. Not only did he fail to condense another truth-seeking jade, even the Tenseigan chakra mode on his body dissipated. Seeing this, Hyojin said, don't try anymore. You've just barely adapted to my Tenseigan. Entering the Tenseigan chakra mode and using it once is almost your limit. If you mess around again, you'll destroy the balance that you've worked so hard to establish, causing your body to be overwhelmed and die on the spot. Half squatting on the ground, Ningxi gasped and nodded. After the excitement subsided, the exhaustion from the depths of his soul immediately swept over him, causing him to be in a trance. So there's no need for Hyojin to emphasize it. He knew that he had reached his limit. But even so, looking at the forest that was raised by him and the ravine he created, his heart was still full of a sense of accomplishment. He sighed with emotion. So this is the power of an immortal. Even if I only transplanted Sensei's eyes and obtained a part of Sensei's power, I can already reach such a terrifying level? Now Ningxi is convinced that his teacher, Hyojin, must be a real immortal. Because in his opinion, he only obtained a part of his teacher's power, and he already has such a terrifying destructive power. He can't imagine how strong his teacher was in his heyday. Hyojin walked in front of Ningxi and said, from now on, there's only one thing you need to do, that is to familiarize yourself with and master the power of the Tenseigan. Ningxi nodded quickly, yes. He also knows that with his current mastery of the Tenseigan, it's difficult to use it in actual combat. If he's not careful, he will drain himself dry. He doesn't even dare to spar with his peers, for fear of destroying the village due to negligence. Hyojin went behind Ningxi and said, "I'm going to place a few marks on your body now, don't resist." Yes. Although he didn't know what Hyojin was going to do, Ningxi still responded honestly. Soon, Hyojin left a chakra on Ningxi's body and arranged a psychic technique. The chakra left behind can allow Hyojin to observe the outside world through the ninja crow before, obtaining Ningxi's vision and seeing everything Ningxi sees from a distance. The psychic technique he set up is a contingency plan. Once Ningxi is in danger, he can use the reverse psychic technique to forcibly intervene and summon Ningxi to his side. Of course, all of this must be done with the giant Tenseigan as a relay, and Ningxi himself does not resist, otherwise, he can't do these arrangements. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 12-15. After that, Ningxi asked some questions about how Hyojin died and about Amatsukami. Hyojin doesn't have the energy to explain these things now, so he casually said a few perfunctory words, and then asked Ningxi to concentrate on adapting to the Tenseigan and not to think about other things. So Ningxi, who has long been accustomed to obeying Hyojin's orders, didn't ask any more questions and obediently adapted to the Tenseigan. A few days later, when Ningxi's state gradually stabilized, Hyojin sent Ningxi back to the village. Through these few days of observation, he found that the activity of his Tenseigan in Ningxi's body has not decreased, and it has been maintained in a relatively stable state. In this state, once Hyojin resurrects and retrieves the Tenseigan, he can immediately carry out the ritual again, and he doesn't need to spend extra time to warm the Tenseigan and let it recover from its dormant state. It can be said that Ningxi is now a living nutrient tank. Storing the Tenseigan in Ningxi can save a lot of unnecessary time for Hyojin. After sending Ningxi away, Hyojin immediately abandoned this temporary base and returned to the Sky Fortress. As Ningxi worried, Hyojin must now start the resurrection immediately. Because no one can predict when the Akatsuki organization will take action again. Although Nagato was impacted by the concept of Sixth Path, proposed by Hyojin last time, he didn't suffer much damage, so although the probability of Nagato choosing to stay dormant is very high, the possibility of Nagato suddenly attacking can't be completely ignored. In addition, Otsutsuki Samurai on the moon also has to be guarded against. After all, Otsutsuki Samurai has already obtained Hayashi's Byakugan, and the most important component of Hyojin's gene fluid is Hayashi's genes, so the purity of Hayashi's Byakugan may be inferior to Spark's, but it is definitely outstanding in the Hyuga clan. Now even if Otsutsuki Samurai already has the Tenseigan, Hyojin will not be surprised at all. Soon, Hyojin summoned Xiang Lin. Seeing Hyojin return to the Sky Fortress, Xiang Lin, who knows what Hyojin has been doing these days, asked curiously, "Sama, have you dealt with the Tenseigan?" Hyojin nodded. Xiang Lin hesitated for a moment and said, "Is it really safe to give it to others?" Hyojin smiled and said, "Don't worry. There is nothing in this world that is unbreakable, no matter how many methods are laid out, there may be mistakes. But compared to laying some kind of powerful seal like Madara Uchiha, leaving some kind of hidden curse mark, emotions and fetters are obviously more effective curse marks." Then, Hyojin told Xiang Lin, "Get ready for the transplant operation tomorrow." In a short period of time, if he wants to improve Xiang Lin's control of the Rinnegan, so that Xiang Lin has the ability to use high-level pupil techniques such as Earth-Exploding Heaven Star and Rebirth Heaven technique, the simplest way is to repeat the successful path of Nagato, let Xiang Lin, who has the Uzumaki clan's sage body, fuse with the Senju clan's sage body, and obtain a sage body close to the sage of the Six Paths. According to Hyojin's judgment, Nagato and Xiang Lin, the two Uzumaki clansmen, are very outstanding even in the Uzumaki clan. Nagato's specialty should be the huge amount of chakra. In this regard, Xiang Lin, who is also a member of the Uzumaki clan, is obviously not as good as Nagato. And Xiang Lin's specialty is the high quality of chakra, which has the healing ability of yang release. Just a bite can obtain a healing effect far beyond medical ninjutsu. So, when it comes to talent, it is not easy to compare who is stronger between Nagato and Xiang Lin at present, but one thing is certain, that is, even if Xiang Lin is not as good as Nagato, it will not be much worse than Nagato. Therefore, Nagato can complete the sage body of the 6 paths through the transplantation of the first-generation cells and complete the physical transformation, and Xiang Lin can probably do the same. Xiang Lin already knew about the transplantation of the first-generation cells, so he was not surprised. "My lord, I have already prepared, we can start the operation now. Don't worry about this day." Hyojin shook his head. He still needs to prepare himself, after all, this is related to his resurrection, so he can't be negligent. After letting Xiang Lin prepare, Hyojin quietly thought about it. Resurrection is naturally his current top priority, and it is something that must be done immediately, because he is now the 5th-generation Naruto of the Mai clan. Although he can hide it for a while through various previous arrangements, he certainly can't hide it for too long. Secondly, the threat of the Akatsuki and Otsutsuki samurai won't allow him to die for too long. What's more, many of the arrangements seem to be tight, but if it is for a long time, there may be all kinds of unpredictable emergencies, so in order to avoid long delays, he must be resurrected as soon as possible. And the key to resurrection is tomorrow's operation. As long as the operation is successful, then according to his speculation, Xiang Lin should have the ability to perform the reincarnation innate technique after the adaptation period. Not only that, as long as Xiang Lin has the body of a 6-path level sage, coupled with the support of the giant Tenseigan, with her terrifying physique, it is very likely that she will be able to survive after using the reincarnation innate technique. After all, Hyojin's body is intact, and Xiang Lin doesn't need to consume too much genjutsu's power to repair his body, and Hyojin's realm also fell in the ritual. He is no longer a 6-path level strong ninja, and his life level has also changed back to an ordinary ninja, so resurrection is not difficult. It must be known that in the original story, Nagato, who did not transplant the first-generation cells, destroyed the Mai clan, and went through a series of battles to resurrect thousands of ninjas and villagers in my village. If Xiang Lin has the body of a 6-path sage, and only resurrects one person, then the probability of survival is very high. After arranging the resurrection, Hyojin started to consider the arrangements for the second ritual. This time, he planned to carry out the resurrection and the ritual at the same time. In other words, after the resurrection, he will not waste any time and immediately carry out the second ritual to break through the bloodline net. This requires him to arrange all the preparations for the second ritual before the resurrection. As soon as he thought about the preparation for the second ritual, his mind was filled with a myriad of thoughts. Whether it was the redesign of the altar, the selection of the location for the ritual, or the repair of the 6 clones, they were all troublesome matters without exception. However, compared to these, the more troublesome thing was to obtain the source of chakra. Previously, Hyojin thought that he had made sufficient preparations, but in reality, the chakra he had prepared was only 1/10 of what was needed for the ritual. Therefore, this time, he had to think of a way to get more chakra. Here's the second update. I'm looking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, I would like to thank all the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you all. Chapter 12-16. After calming down and carefully sorting out his situation, Kuroto found that the biggest problem that troubled him was not the resurrection, nor the problems related to the Tenseigan, or the selection of the location of the ritual, or the restoration work of the main body and the 6 clones, etc., but the chakra source needed for the ritual. Because except for the chakra source, the other problems are troublesome but can be solved. Only the chakra source needed for the ritual really gave Hyojin a headache, because after experiencing the ritual, he personally understood how exaggerated the chakra amount needed to break through the Kekii Genkai net. All the preparations he had made before were only 1/10 of what was needed. Holding his forehead with his hand, Hyojin frowned slightly and whispered, "Where should I get so much chakra?" As soon as he thought of chakra, 2 keywords flashed in his mind. The first keyword is naturally tailed beast. It can be said that as long as a ninja is from one of the 5 great shinobi villages, they will immediately think of tailed beasts, because tailed beasts are almost synonymous with a huge amount of chakra to some extent. But Hyojin can't take this path. First, except for the 1, 3, 7, and 9 tails, the other 5 tailed beasts have fallen into the hands of the Akatsuki organization, and it is very difficult to take them back from them. Second, even if Hyojin gathered all the 9 tailed beasts, it is still not enough for the chakra required for the ritual. Unless he can send all the 9 tailed beasts back to the body of the outer path golem and resurrect the 10 tails, the chakra amount may be enough for him to carry out the ritual. But in this way, it is equivalent to him repeating what the Akatsuki organization did. Not only did he have to completely defeat the Akatsuki organization, take away Nagato's Rinnegan, and gain control of the heretic demon statue, but he also had to personally kill Naruto, the disciple that he had painstakingly cultivated, as well as Gaara and Yagura, the 2 loyal subordinates. Then, he had to face Black Zetsu's scheme and face the furious Sage of 6 Paths. After thinking for a while, Hyojin immediately dispelled this unreliable idea. The second key was natural energy. One must know that even the chakra fruit that allows an ordinary Otsutsuki Kagaya to instantly step into the Kekii Genkai net is a product of the divine tree absorbing the natural energy of the shinobi world. Although Kagaya belongs to the Otsutsuki clan, before she swallowed the chakra fruit, she obviously didn't have the strength of a 6-path shinobi. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been threatened by the natives of the shinobi world at that time. But after swallowing the chakra fruit, she instantly gained the power of Kekii net, and opened the 9 Magatama Rinnegan between her eyebrows. From this, it can be seen that the natural energy scattered between the heavens and the earth that can support the divine tree to bear the chakra fruit is more powerful than the tailed beasts, and it is also more valuable to excavate. From a certain point of view, Kagaya, who is known as the ancestor of chakra, also created chakra by absorbing the natural energy of the shinobi world. Immortal arts. Thinking of this, Hyojin's eyes gradually became serious. Since the path of collecting tailed beasts is not going to work, mastering immortal arts has become the path in front of him that he must go through. And currently, Hyojin knows a total of 4.5 ways to practice immortal arts. Among them, the 3 most important ways are Mount Myaboku Ryuchi Cave and Shikatsu Forest. These are the 3 holy lands of the shinobi world. Ninjas like Jiraiya, Naruto, Medicine Master Satsuki, and Medicine Master Satsuki, who inherited the genes of Orochimaru and Medicine Master Satsuki, all obtained immortal arts from these 3 holy lands. The 4th way is Yugo, who mutated due to the erosion of the high concentration of natural energy. Shinobi, who was cast with the curse seal by Orochimaru, and Haku, who was cast with the heavenly curse seal, and then taken back, accidentally mastered immortal arts. The source of mastering immortal arts is Yugo, who mutated. The last way is the Miko-sama of the Land of Demons. In fact, from the fact that the Miko-sama has the ability to prophesy, it can be seen that the Miko-sama of the Land of Demons also mastered some kind of technique to use natural energy. This is also the reason why the Miko-sama has a huge amount of chakra that is not inferior to the tailed beast. Hyojin doesn't intend to take the path of the 3 holy lands. It's not that he has any prejudice against the 3 Holy Lands, or that he doesn't want to lose face, but he simply feels that the way the 3 Holy Lands practice immortal arts is not pure enough. Or rather, it's pure for the species of the Holy Lands, but not for humans. For example, Jiraiya, who practiced immortal arts in Mount Myaboku, after entering Sage Mode, part of his body will turn into a frog. And Naruto, who practiced immortal arts in the Ryuchi Cave, and Medicine Master Do, after entering Sage Mode, their bodies will turn into a snake. So, instead of going to the 3 Holy Lands to practice immortal arts that are not pure for humans, it's better to try the 4th way, which is to ask Orochimaru for some information related to the Curse Seal, or to ask Haku about his experience in mastering immortal art. As for the last half of the path, Hyojin suddenly remembered something. He quickly got up and walked towards his secret vault. Soon, he found the items entrusted to him by the previous Miko-sama one by one. At the beginning, the Miko-sama of the Land of Demons entrusted a total of 4 items to Hyojin. Except for the sealed bell that has been given to Zyuen, the other 3 items are still in Hyojin's hands. These 3 items are the symbol of the status of the Miko-sama, the Miko-sama's crown, a seal scroll that recorded the various sealing techniques of the Miko-sama, and a bottle of medicinal pills. Putting the Miko-sama's crown and the seal scroll aside, Hyojin picked up the bottle of medicinal pills. There were originally 3 medicinal pills in this bottle, one of which Hyojin gave to Zyuen when she was 10 years old, according to the agreement with the previous Miko-sama, and the remaining 2 were gifts from the previous Miko-sama to Hyojin. The function of the medicinal pills is very simple, which is to help the Miko-sama master natural energy. If someone who does not have the bloodline of the Miko-sama takes the medicinal pills, although they can't directly master natural energy, they will get a chance to get close to nature and understand nature. In history, there have been examples of Miko-sama's guards who mastered natural energy after taking the medicinal pills. Holding the medicinal pill bottle, Hyojin's eyes gradually deepened. He began to think about how high the probability of him mastering immortal arts would be if he obtained the experience and skills of Haku, coupled with the assistance of the 2 medicinal pills in this bottle. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 12-17. It was still difficult for Hyojin, who hadn't mastered the immortal arts, to make an effective assessment of how much potential the immortal arts could provide. But one thing he was sure of was that as long as he mastered the immortal arts, the problem of the shortage of chakra source needed for the ritual should be alleviated to a certain extent. However, he was still in the state of dirted soil body, so he couldn't practice the immortal arts. So now he could only collect as much information as possible and try it after he was resurrected. At this time, Hyojin's eyes moved to the witch's crown on the side, and he secretly pondered. In fact, there had always been a huge chakra source beside him. This chakra source was not someone else, but the current witch of the country of demons, Zyuen. The previous Miko-sama had personally told Kuroto that Zion was the most talented one among all the Miko-sama, so the previous Miko-sama made the seal bell to seal Zion's power. Morio is the dark side that the witch of the country of demons stripped from her body. It is the other half that the witch tried to abandon, and its chakra amount has exceeded the ordinary tail beast. I'm afraid it is only under 9 tails, so as the bright side, the chakra amount of Zyuen should be equivalent to the dark side of Morio. With just a simple analysis, Hyojin could speculate that the chakra amount of Zyuen, who had completely unsealed, should not be less than Morio. If the tail beast was used as a measurement, then the chakra amount contained in Zyuen should only be under the most special 9 tails, which was stronger than other single 8-tailed beasts. In other words, in addition to Morio, Hyojin also had Zyuen, the chakra amount source which was below 9 tails and above 8 tails. Do I need to go that far? Hyojin whispered to himself, and his tone was full of conflict. Obviously, Zyuen's potential was not just her chakra amount, which was above 8 tails. Her real potential was actually the fusion of her dark side, Morio, and the complete state of the witch. The difference between a split body and a complete body could not be simply measured by addition and subtraction. For example, the chakra of the 9-tailed beast was far less than the 10-tailed chakra after the fusion. In the same way, once the split body of Ziyuan and Morio fused, the chakra amount would not be as simple as 1 plus 1. Hyojin had previously estimated that once Ziyuan reaccommodated her dark side, Morio, and returned to her complete state, she would be the only one who could catch up with Naruto and Sasuke, and break through to the 6th Daos level. However, the risk of doing so was also huge. If he was not careful, Ziyuan might be fused with Morio, giving birth to a demon close to the 6th Daos level. And this was the reason why Hyojin was so conflicted. If he succeeded, not only would he get a subordinate close to the 6th Daos level, but he would also get a very powerful chakra source, which would greatly alleviate the lack of chakra needed for the ritual. But if he failed, he would have to face a powerful enemy close to the 6th Daos level, who was skilled in all kinds of strange sealing techniques, sinister, cruel, and bloodthirsty. While playing with the Miko's crown, Hyojin gradually fell into deep thought. In fact, everyone has a dark side, and Miko-sama's method of forcibly stripping away her dark side was obviously a failure and undesirable. Or it could be said that it was because of Miko-sama's attempt that caused endless trouble to the Miko-sama. Because Morio and Miko-sama are two sides of the same body, as long as Miko-sama doesn't die, the Morio, that is a part of Miko-sama, can never be destroyed, so Miko-sama can only seal Morio. But a seal can't last forever. Even the seal formed by the Sage of the 6th Daos can be broken, let alone a seal cast by Miko-sama, who only has half of her strength. As long as time passes, there will inevitably be all kinds of flaws in the seal, and every time a flaw appears, it will be a test of life and death for Miko-sama. Because the strength of Morio and Miko-sama are close, and Morio obviously doesn't have such a moral bottom line, so Miko-sama is often on the defensive or even at a disadvantage. Ziyuan's mother died in this kind of disaster. Ziyuan is the most talented Miko-sama. Maybe she can correct the mistake made by Miko-sama and put things back on track. Stripping away the dark side and sealing it is not the best way to do it. The most appropriate way is to leave the dark side in one's body, seal it with oneself, and use it as a sharpening stone to sharpen oneself, constantly reminding oneself. At the beginning, Miko-sama wanted to get rid of the dark side once and for all, but the result was endless harm. And Ziyuan's innate talent as the strongest Miko-sama may be to correct this mistake. From this point of view, with Ziyuan's talent as the strongest Miko-sama, and with the help of Hyojin, it is indeed the best time to deal with this problem left over from history. After making up his mind, Hyojin decided to give it a try. However, this kind of attempt is related to the Miko-sama's life, so he must get the consent of Ziyuan, because only if Ziyuan voluntarily accepts Morio, such a fusion may be successful. With a thought, he controlled the ninja crow and sent a message to Ziyuan, who stayed in the village. Next, he left the secret warehouse and went to the operating room to prepare for the fragrant phosphorus transplant tomorrow. Caw-caw, suddenly, a crow's caw interrupted his thoughts. He summoned the ninja crow with mist on its wings and removed the communication scroll from the ninja crow's leggings. Then, he opened it and looked at it, and his brows gradually wrinkled. This communication ninja crow was sent from the Mist Village. A week ago, the Mist Village found a huge unidentified ironclad ship in the waters of the Country of Water. Then, the ironclad ship went all the way through the waters of the Country of Water, and then directly landed in the Country of Tea. After passing through the Country of Tea by land, it disappeared in the southeast bay shared by the Country of Fire, the Country of Wind, and the Country of Water. Ironclad ship? The first thing that flashed in Hyojin's mind was the Sky Ninja Village, because the Sky Ninja Village did have some ironclad ships, but the Sky Ninja Village had been destroyed by him many years ago, and even the leader of the Sky Ninja Village, Shino, was captured by him, so it was unlikely that it was the Sky Ninja Village this time. Moreover, the ironclad ship could actually land and cross on the road, which made him a little curious. Does such a thing exist in the shinobi world? Although he was a little concerned, he obviously couldn't take the time to investigate at the moment, and such a trivial matter wasn't worth investigating in person, so he gave an order to the Mist Village to closely monitor the ironclad ship, and if there was any news, report it immediately. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 12-18. Hyojin stared at Xiang Lin on the operating table with a gloomy face and asked, "How is it, do you feel better now?" "Sir, I'm fine." Xiang Lin answered weakly with sweat all over his face. Hyojin sighed. "Well, forget it, stop for a while, you'd better take a rest." With that, he patted Xiang Lin's shoulder gently, then turned and sat on the bench beside him. Just now, Hyojin performed a first-generation cell transplant operation on Xiang Lin, but the operation did not go well. In the end, he had to use the giant Tenseigan to absorb chakra and urgently extract the wood-release chakra from Xiang Lin's body, which barely prevented the first-generation cells from completely rampaging in Xiang Lin's body. This step is really not easy. After letting out a sigh of relief, Kuroto secretly sighed with emotion. He has long known that the way for Nagato to get rid of his disability and improve his physique is to transplant the first-generation cells and integrate the blood of the Uzumaki and Senju to obtain a sage body close to the Sage of the Six Paths, but he has not transplanted the first-generation cells for Xiang Lin. The first-generation cells are not so easy to fuse. What Nagato can do does not mean that Xiang Lin can do it. As far as the current situation is concerned, only the Uchiha bloodline and the Sharingan are clearly helpful for the transplantation of Hashirama cells, and most of the successful cases of Hashirama cell transplantation are related to the Uchiha bloodline and the Sharingan. For example, Uchiha Madara, Obsidian, Danzo, and Jishui, Itachi, and Shinichi, which were successfully transplanted in Hyojin's hands. Because the Yin release chakra contained in the Sharingan can effectively neutralize the Yang release chakra contained in the first-generation cells, so the stronger the power of the Sharingan, or the more the number of Sharingan, the better the suppression effect on the first-generation cells. The reason why the old and weak ninja like Danzo can barely bear the first-generation cells is because of the Sharingan. In contrast, the Sage Body's ability to withstand the cells of the Hashirama is much worse than the Sharingan. This is not limited to the Uzumaki race, even the Sage Body of the Senju race, which is the same as the Hashirama, is also difficult to withstand the cells of the Hashirama. This is not Hyojin's unfounded speculation, but there is an actual example. After becoming Naruto, he specially consulted the files of the first-generation cell transplantation program carried out in the village. According to the records, there were many elites of the Senju clan among the volunteers at that time, because after the death of the first generation, the Senju clan was the most eager to reproduce the wood release. But the mighty cell transplantation program ended in a fiasco, and even the volunteers of the Senju clan didn't survive. All of them died in the rampage of the first-generation cells. Fortunately, Hyojin has the giant Tenseigan. If the first time doesn't work, he can try the second time, and if the second time doesn't work, he can try the third time. As long as he keeps trying, he will eventually succeed. It's just that Xiang Lin has to suffer a bit. After all, it's not a good experience to bear the rampage of the first-generation cells. Hyojin even suspects that Nagato's success is also due to the outer path golem. Because in some aspects, Nagato's outer path golem, is very similar to his giant Tenseigan. Both have the ability to absorb chakra. Therefore, even if Nagato failed to suppress the first-generation cells at that time, he could theoretically use the outer path golem to extract the wood-release chakra from his body in order to contain the rampage of the first-generation cells. After a while, without waiting for Hyojin to speak, Xiang Lin on the operating table stood up and said, "Sama, I have rested well. My village." Ziyuan didn't disturb her guards. She tiptoed out of the house, and then quietly left the village under the guidance of a ninja crow. Although the power of the witch in her body was sealed by the bell made by her mother, Ziyuan is after all a student who has experienced a whole set of ninja education in Mai. She is not the weak girl who was sealed in the original time and space. Her strength is close to the level of a chunin, so there is no problem for her to go out alone. While Ziyuan sneaked out of the village, Xiaoli rushed to Ningxi's house and shouted, "Ningxi, get ready, our class has a mission." Ningxi, who just returned to the village yesterday, was a little surprised. "What mission?" Xiaoli urged. "I don't know, it seems to be an urgent mission. Kai-sensei is waiting for us, let's go." Ningxi didn't dare to delay. He quickly put on his ninja gear and rushed to the assembly point with Xiaoli. Guy and Tian have already been waiting at the assembly point. Seeing Ningxi and Xiaoli finally arrived, Guy didn't say a word of nonsense and directly led his team to leave the village. On the way, Guy introduced, "This time we are performing an investigation and support mission because the incident happened suddenly. The mission is very urgent." Ningxi calmly asked, "Kai-sensei, what is the specific content of the mission?" Guy shook his head. "The village doesn't know much about the specific situation. At present, we only know that a group of unidentified enemies landed from the sea in the Land of Wind and the Land of Water and attacked several villages along the coast. After the investigation team of Sand Crypsis went to investigate, they had a conflict with the enemy and were defeated. Because Kazekage is still in Mai, Sand Crypsis sent a request to Mai to cooperate with the investigation. After confirming that the mission has nothing to do with the Akatsuki organization, Ningxi secretly breathed a sigh of relief. What he is most worried about now is that before Hyojin-sensei resurrects, the Akatsuki organization will launch another operation again, because he is very clear that in the entire shinobi world, only Hyojin-sensei can defeat the leader of the Akatsuki organization, Nagato. Xiaoli excitedly cheered, "Great, our class can finally carry out a real mission." Tian also echoed, "Yes, finally we don't have to stay in the village every day." The corners of Ningxi's mouth rose, and he was also a little eager to try. Today, he is not the same as before. Not only did he transplant Sensei Hyojin's unparalleled Tenseigan, but he also signed a contract with the Ryumyaku and became the Ryumyaku's Jinchuriki. Compared with a few days ago, his combat power is completely different. At this time, even if he faces a Kage-level expert, he has the confidence to win. Guy, the leader of the team, said seriously, "As ninjas, we have to treat every mission carefully, not to mention the identity of the enemy this time is unknown, so we must not be careless." After being scolded by Guy, several people in the team quickly restrained their frivolity. After a long journey, Guy's team finally entered the territory of the Land of Water, but at the rendezvous point with the Sand Crypsis investigation team, they did not see the Sand Crypsis investigation team. After some searching, they finally found the bodies of all the members of the Sand Crypsis investigation team in a call more than 10 kilometers away from the rendezvous point. The first update is here. Condolences to the heroes who sacrificed themselves in the fight against the plague this time. Chapter 12-19. Squatting next to the bodies of the Sand Crypsis investigation team, Ningxi said in a deep voice, "The body temperature is close to the ambient temperature, the time of death is at least 5 hours. Tian, who looked around, added, There are traces of ninja tools and ninjutsu around, the battlefield should be here. Xiaoli was a little puzzled. There are not many traces of fighting here. Does it mean that the strength of the two sides is not at the same level, and the Sand Crypsis investigation team was completely destroyed by the enemy without any fierce resistance? Ningxi got up and nodded gently. Well, judging from the footprints left nearby, the number of enemies should be a lot, at least a dozen people, but it seems that only 1 or 2 people attacked, and from the wounds on the bodies of these Sand Crypsis ninjas, it can be seen that the person who attacked used a large and sharp weapon. Guy, who was on guard on the side, said with satisfaction, "Your analysis is good." Ningxi asked, "Kai-sensei, what should we do next?" Guy pondered for a moment and said, "The Sand Crypsis investigation team has been completely destroyed, and our support mission has failed, but we still have the responsibility of investigation, so we must figure out who the enemy is and what their purpose is." Ningxi, Xiaoli, and Tian nodded in unison. They don't want their first official mission to be declared a failure because of the accidental annihilation of the Sand Crypsis team. Soon, Kaiben followed the footprints left by the enemy and began to track. He doesn't know whether the other party had no intention of covering up the traces at all, or the other party wasn't a ninja, but with Ningxi, Kaiben tracked the footprints very smoothly. Of course, Ningxi did not use the Tenseigan, but tracked the footprints in the Byakugan state. With the insight of Hyojin's Tenseigan, even if it's just an ordinary Byakugan state, all the traces in the surrounding environment can be clearly reflected in Ningxi's mind. So much so that Ningxi doesn't need to stop to distinguish. He can track all the way. This abnormal scene shocked not only Little Li and Tian, but even Guy was shocked. After a long time, Ningxi, who was at the forefront of the team, suddenly gestured to his companions behind him. Then, his figure flashed and he hid behind a large tree. The rest of the team knew that Ningxi had discovered the enemy, so they immediately spread out and hid in various nearby bunkers. After hiding themselves, the few of them slowly poked their heads out. Taking a closer look, they discovered that there were 2 groups of people in a valley far away. One of them was wearing heavy armor, and the style of their clothing was completely different from the shinobi world, while the other side was actually 2 ninjas wearing the Red Cloud uniform of the Akatsuki organization. Judging from their appearance, they seemed to be Kakuzu and Hidun of the Akatsuki. Who are those people in heavy armor? How did they get involved with the Akatsuki? For a time, these 2 questions flashed in the minds of Kaiben and the others. But once things are related to the Akatsuki, even if they are just ordinary members of the Akatsuki, they must not be taken lightly, so Guy immediately gave a meaningful look to Tian, who was in charge of communication. Tian understood and quickly retreated into the grass, and then quietly summoned a communication eagle to pass the information back to the village. In the valley, Kakuzu stared at the group of aliens in front of him and said coldly, "We have helped you solve the ninjas of the Sand Crypsis according to the agreement, now it's time for you to pay the reward." Hidun, who was carrying the Bloody Moon scythe on his shoulder, yawned and said, "Hurry up and finish it, it's so boring." Feeling the contempt of Kakuzu and Hidun, the group of aliens on the opposite side were filled with righteous indignation. However, the leader of the group was a middle-aged man wearing a monocle. He chuckled and took out a box saying, "Thank you for your hard work." Kakuzu opened the box and found a blue crystal the size of a child's palm. Immediately, his face turned cold and said, "Hide, it doesn't look like gold." The middle-aged man wearing a monocle on his left eye, named Hyde, explained, "I'm sorry, we can't take out that much gold, but this grayer stone is a treasure far beyond gold. I'm sure you will be satisfied with it." A golden-haired young man standing next to Hyde said, "You 2 ignorant fools. Compared to the stone of grayer, gold is nothing." Hyde quickly scolded, "Timsy, don't be rude." At this time, Kakuzu focused his attention on the palm-sized blue crystal stone in the box, which was called the Stone of Grail by the aliens. Touching it lightly, Kakuzu was surprised to find that there was a strong chakra reaction coming from it. Fei Duan also exclaimed in surprise. Both of them are experienced people in the shinobi world, but this is the first time they have seen such a crystal with such a rich chakra concentration. Seeing the slight change in their expressions, Hyde smiled and said, "You two should be satisfied, right?" Kakuzu and Hidun looked at each other and nodded slowly. Hyde said, "Then I'll trouble you two with the next task. As long as you catch the leader of the merchant group for us, we will definitely pay you a satisfactory commission." After putting away the box, Kakuzu stretched out 2 fingers and said, "In 2 days we will hand him over to you." Whoosh! Whoosh! As soon as his voice fell, Kakuzu and Hidun disappeared in front of the aliens. After Kakuzu and Fei Duan left, the golden-haired youth called Timsy quickly asked Hyde, "Lord Hyde, why are we working with these 2 unknown people? And he even gave them a precious grayer stone?" Hyde smiled and said, "The situation on this continent is much more complicated than we expected. You've seen the enemies called the Sand Crypsis ninjas, right? Their strength should not be underestimated." Timsy said, "Those Sand Crypsis ninjas are just SOSO. I can deal with them as well. As long as we find the vein of grayer stone, no one can stop us from building our ideal country. The 2 ninjas named Akatsuki are just tools in our hands. Hiring them is just to save precious time." Hyde said in a gentle tone, "Don't worry, Timsy, as long as we find the vein of grayer stone, no one can stop us from building our ideal country. The 2 ninjas called Akatsuki are just tools in our hands." Without a doubt, this group of aliens came from the continent on the other side of the sea. They traveled thousands of miles across the sea for only one purpose, and that was to find the grayer stone vein hidden at the border between the wind country and the sea country. However, after landing in the wind country, they encountered the ninjas of the Sand Crypsis, and the 2 sides had a conflict, which then attracted the attention of the Akatsuki organization. So, as the leader, Hyde hired the Akatsuki organization, who was familiar with the situation of the ninja world. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who tipped today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 12:20. Because of the distance, Kaiban didn't hear what the 2 sides said in the valley, but he vaguely saw that the 2 sides seemed to have reached some kind of deal, and the 2 Akatsuki members gave a box to the Akatsuki members, and then the 2 Akatsuki members left in a hurry. There's something wrong with these aliens. Ningxi's expression was solemn. Because he knows Sensei Hyojin's current state, he is particularly sensitive to the activities of the Akatsuki, and the strange scene in front of him naturally aroused his uneasiness. Rumble, suddenly, a roar came from the distant valley, and the earth seemed to tremble. Kaiban and the others looked in the direction of the sound, only to see those armored aliens boarding an ironclad warship that could travel on land, and leaving the valley amidst the flying sand and stones. Xiaoli asked Ningxi, "Who are those people?" Ningxi shook his head. Not to mention Ningxi, who recently graduated from a shinobi school, even Guy, who has experienced the 3rd Shinobi War and carried out many missions, can't answer the question. At this time, Tenzin asked, "Kai-sensei, the information has been sent back to the village, what should we do now?" Guy said seriously, "Since this matter involves the Akatsuki, we can't just ignore it. No one can tell whether the Akatsuki is planning a new round of conspiracy against the 5 great shinobi villages, so as a shinobi of Mai, Guy must investigate this matter to the end, even if it's risky." "Okay." Ningxi and the others nodded without hesitation. Because the tracks left by the ironclad warship on land are too eye-catching, Kaiban didn't follow the aliens in the ironclad warship, but followed the direction in which the Akatsuki members left. The chase continued all the way until night time, when Kaiban accidentally discovered a battlefield where ninjas had fought in a small forest. Ningxi immediately activated Byakugan and glanced around the battlefield that still exudes a burnt smell, then pointed to a pile of rocks in the distance. There is a survivor over there. Xiaoli hurriedly rushed over, cleared the rocks, and dug out a heavily injured and unconscious Sand Crypsis ninja. Marquis? After seeing the face of the injured Sand Crypsis ninja, Guy exclaimed. Tian asked, Kai-sensei, do you know him? Guy nodded calmly. Well, his name is Maki, an elite jonin of the Sand Crypsis. Not long ago, he was nominated by the 4 generations of Kazekage to become one of the elders of the Sand Crypsis. He is a very powerful ninja. Hearing that the other party was an elder of the Sand Crypsis, Tian did not dare to be negligent. She quickly bandaged Ma Ji's wounds. After a while, Maki woke up and saw Guy and the others. He quickly said, Quickly go and save old man Heian. We can't let the Akatsuki find the stone of Greyer Vein. Greyer stone? Kai was stunned for a moment before he asked, What is that? After taking a deep breath and calming himself down, Maki told him the whole story. It turned out that in a canyon at the junction of the Land of Wind and the Land of Wind, there is a hidden ruin of the ancient empire. The ancient empire that had long been annihilated in the long river of history once had a glorious civilization, and the cornerstone that created their glorious civilization was a kind of crystal called the Greyer Stone that Maki had just mentioned. This stone contains a large amount of chakra, which can be used for both construction and destruction. The rise and fall of the ancient empire are closely related to this stone of Greyer. The old man Heian that Maki mentioned, on the surface, is the leader of a caravan traveling around various countries, but in fact, he is a descendant of the ancient empire, and he knows the specific location of the ancient empire ruins. When Maki commanded the Sand Crypsis investigation team to investigate the aliens, they accidentally found that the aliens were chasing the Heian's caravan, so they rescued the caravan. Margie then learned from He Yen that the target of the foreign races was the ruins of the ancient empire. It was also the location of the Greyer stone mine. However, just as Maki was about to send this information back to the Sand Crypsis, the aliens actually colluded with the Akatsuki organization. Facing the Akatsuki organization, the Sand Crypsis investigation team could only retreat, and in the end, in order to cover the escape of Maki and Heian, all the members of the Sand Crypsis investigation team died, and Maki was eventually caught by the Akatsuki organization and was defeated. The important person who knows the location of the ancient empire ruins, Heian, was also captured by the Akatsuki organization. Maki emphasized, If it's only those aliens who found the stone of Greyer Vein, there's still room for redemption, but if the Akatsuki organization finds the stone of Greyer Vein, then the problem is serious. Guy thought for a while and then asked seriously, Is the stone of Greyer really that powerful? Maki replied, I fought with a young alien who has a stone of Greyer embedded in his body. The other party can perform many powerful ninjutsu without hand seals, and his recovery speed is amazing, plus the Akatsuki organization is also involved, so even if this stone of Greyer is not as magical as the old man Heian said, it is by no means something that can be ignored. Like most of the ninjas in the 5 great shinobi villages, once they find out that the Akatsuki organization is involved, even if it's a trivial matter, they will treat it with extreme caution. Not to mention that the old man Heian kept bragging to him about how the stone of Greyer is the source of all disasters, and how he shouldn't be greedy for it, and so on. Then what are you going to do? Guy obviously believes in Maki's judgment. Not only him, but even Ningxi, Xiaoli, and Tian on the side also feel that the situation is getting serious. Maki shook his head and said, I won't die, you don't have to worry about me, just go and save Heian. As long as we save that old man from the Akatsuki organization, we can ensure that the stone of Greyer Vein won't fall into the hands of the Akatsuki organization. Xiaoli anxiously said, But where are we going to save him now? Ningxi pondered for a while and said, We don't need to look everywhere. As long as we follow those aliens quietly, we should be able to find the traces of the 2 members of the Akatsuki organization. Yes. Guy agreed with Ningxi's judgment. There is no doubt that compared to the swift movements of the Akatsuki members, the ironclad ship that plows a long trench on the ground is obviously easier to track. Moreover, those aliens are cooperating with the Akatsuki organization, so as long as they follow the aliens, they will naturally be able to find the Akatsuki members, as well as the leader of the caravan, Heian, who was kidnapped by the Akatsuki organization. The situation is urgent. Guy asked Tian to leave some medicine for the injured Maki and immediately led the team out. As expected, Kaiban quickly found the ironclad ship of the aliens and followed it all the way to a canyon, where he saw Kakuzu, Fei Duan, and the leader of the caravan, Heian, who was kidnapped by the aliens. The 2 groups of people only exchanged a few words before they escorted He Yen into a hidden cave on the side of the canyon wall and disappeared into the canyon. Could it be that the stone of grayer vein is in this canyon? For a moment Kaiban and the others looked at each other. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 12:21. He thought that he still had a chance to save the old man and stop the Akatsuki from finding the stone of grayer vein, but he didn't expect that the Akatsuki and the aliens would meet up in the canyon where the stone of grayer vein is hidden. Oh no! Ningxi secretly said, not good. The other party's speed was so ferocious that it completely exceeded his expectations, causing him to be caught unprepared for a moment. Xiaoli and Tian also looked at Guy anxiously, waiting for Guy's order. Guy calmly weighed the situation and said, "It's too late to wait for the village's reinforcements, we can only take action ourselves." Even if the village received the information they sent and immediately sent reinforcements, it would take at least 2 or 3 days for the reinforcements to arrive, and the Akatsuki and the aliens are already on the way to the stone of grayer vein. It's obviously too late to wait for the reinforcements. Fortunately, there are only 2 Akatsuki members participating in this incident, and they aren't the most dangerous ones, so Guy feels that his team isn't completely helpless. After making up his mind, Guy left a mark for the reinforcements and led the team to sneak into the canyon. Inside the canyon, the seemingly ordinary canyon has a completely different world inside. After turning into a cave, the aliens and the Akatsuki finally stepped into the ruins of the legendary ancient empire. From the size of the ruins, this legendary ancient empire should really have a glorious civilization, which made everyone even more interested in the stone of grayer vein. Taking the opportunity to look around the ruins, the aliens exchanged glances with each other and seemed to be thinking about when to deal with the 2 Akatsuki members. As the leader of the mutated tribe, Hyde, who was wearing a monocle on his left eye, looked gentle. Although he had a faint smile on his face, his heart was boiling with killing intent. To him, the Akatsuki was just a tool that he picked up, and now that he has successfully found the stone of grayer vein, the Akatsuki naturally has no value to him anymore. Jiao Du and Fei Duan, who were walking at the front of the group, did not seem to notice the strange thoughts of the foreign races. They nonchalantly escorted He Yen into the depths of the ruins. The whole team was strangely quiet. Only He Yen, who was being escorted forward, kept saying, "The stone of grayer is not a power that you can control. You will destroy this world." However, He Yan's shouting did not attract anyone's attention. Whether it's Kakuzu, Fei Dan, or the leader of the mutated race, all of them are looking forward to the possibility that the stone of grayer mine really has the power to destroy the world, as Old Man Heian said. Not long after, the group arrived in front of a cliff. At the very front of the cliff was a stone platform formed by 3 giant stone pillars. The stone platform was carved with exquisite relief. It looked like an altar, but it also looked like some kind of mechanism. In front of the stone platform was a pitch-black, bottomless abyss. Coming to the stone platform, Kakuzu asked He Yen, "Where is the mine?" Yen subconsciously glanced at one of the reliefs on the stone platform, then suddenly realized something, immediately retracted his gaze in panic, and stammered. I don't know. Although Yan's reaction was very fast, it was still noticed by Kakuzu and the leader of the outsiders, Hyde. Both of them turned to look at the relief that Yen had just glanced over with a playful look on their faces. Soon after, a golden-haired youth named Timsy walked over and stepped on the relief sculpture. Gotcha! In a split second, the entire stone pillar with the carvings suddenly caved in like an elevator, bringing everyone into the seemingly bottomless abyss. Swish, swish, swish! At the moment when the stone pillar sank, Kaiban, who has been secretly following the Akatsuki and the mutated race, had no choice but to appear and flash to the sinking stone pillar. At this time, on the rapidly sinking stone pillar, Fei Dan raised the bloody crescent scythe in his hand and pointed it at Kaiban and said with a smile, "Yo, so it's Mai's rats. I always thought it was those idiots from the Sand Crypsis who were following us." Kaiban said in a deep voice, "No matter what you want to do, we will stop you." Fei Dan laughed. "You're talking big." Just like Fei Dan, Kakuzu didn't care too much about the sudden appearance of Kaiban, and said calmly, "Fei Dan, don't mess around, find the mine first." Tsk. Fei Dan lightly spat, then put down the bloody crescent scythe in his hand. Because the stone pillar is still rapidly sinking, in order to avoid accidents, Kaiban and the others are not in a hurry to make a move, and the two sides are facing each other on the stone pillar. After a long time, the speed of the stone pillars sinking gradually slowed down, and finally stopped at the entrance of an underground palace. The mutated race, Akatsuki and Kaiban walked down the stone pillar, facing each other, and came to an incomparably spacious underground palace. In the center of the underground palace there is an obvious magic circle that looks a bit like a psychic circle. On the walls of the palace, the history of the ancient empire is painted. These beautiful murals record the whole process of the empire's rise and fall, and the last mural is empty, only darkness, seems to symbolize complete death and destruction. At this time, the blond boy Timsy pulled out the short sword at his waist and looked at Hyde. "Sir." Hyde smiled, then opened his arms and said to the Akatsuki and Kaiban, "Thank you for your help allowing us to arrive here smoothly, but for the sake of our great ideal country, please die here." Following Hyde's chuckle, all the mutated race took out their weapons. Fei Duan carried the bloody moon scythe and looked at Hyde with interest. "You want to fight with the Akatsuki?" Hyde smiled contemptuously. "Just a group of ninjas, and you dare to touch the stone of Greyer? Only I am qualified to have such power, and you can only die." Hyde has seen the ninjas of the Sand Crypsis, and he knows that although the ninja's ninjutsu is somewhat difficult to deal with, that's all. But now there are only 6 ninjas in front of him, and they are hostile to each other, so he doesn't put the Akatsuki and Kaiban in his eyes at all. Kaiban and the others were also surprised at this time. They did not expect these mutated race to be so arrogant, not even putting the Akatsuki in their eyes. It seems that we have underestimated these mutated race. With such suspicion, Kaiban started fighting with the mutated race. Because Hyde's tone was too arrogant, the cautious Ningxi did not dare to be careless, and as soon as the battle started, he fiercely attacked the 2 heavily armored mutated race giants with iron hammers. Bang bang, after the 2 sides crossed each other, Ningxi looked back and found that the 2 mutated race giants who were hit by his soft punches just fell straight to the ground, dead. Huh? Ningxi was instantly confused. It's going to be a new week soon, and the leaderboard will be updated, so I implore everyone to recommend and support me. It's no trouble at all, please. Also, thank you to the students who donated today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 12-22. Inside the Air Fortress. Greyer's stone, Hyojin's eyes were stunned, and then he suddenly understood. Because he had been busy with the first-generation cell transplant surgery for Xianglin, He didn't have the energy to pay attention to Ningxi all the time. When he was free, he learned about the Grayer stone through the chakra left on Ningxi. Yes, he just completed the surgery and successfully transplanted the first-generation cells for Xiang Lin. The surgery lasted for 2 or 3 days, and a total of 17 transplants were performed. In the end, not to mention Xiang Lin, even he, who had the impure soil body, felt exhausted. But fortunately, after unremitting efforts, the first-generation cell transplant was finally successful. From this transplant surgery, Hyojin found that if the chakra's amount of the transplanted was enough, the success rate of the transplant would be improved accordingly. Nagato's success, in addition to the Rinnegan and the Outer Path Demon statue, his own huge amount of chakra may also be an important reason for his success in fusing with the first-generation cells. Compared to Nagato, Xiang Lin had a big disadvantage in this aspect, because Xiang Lin's specialty was not the chakra's amount, but the high quality and special healing ability. But no matter how high the quality of Xiang Lin's yang release chakra was, it was impossible to be higher than the yang release chakra that contained the characteristics of the divine tree in the first-generation cells. Therefore, there was a big gap between Xiang Lin and Nagato when it came to fusing the first-generation cells. Under normal circumstances, this gap could not be crossed. Even with the help of a pair of Rinnegan, the probability of Xiang Lin successfully transplanting the first-generation cells was very small, and as long as there was a rampage, it was enough to kill her. But Hyojin's technology and the existence of the giant Tenseigan helped Xiang Lin to bridge the gap that she could not overcome, allowing her to do the same thing as Nagato. Glancing at Xiang Lin, who had just finished the surgery and was so tired that she fell asleep on the operating table, Hyojin slowly withdrew from the operating room. Hyojin, who had the impure soil body, would not feel tired, nor did he need to rest physiologically. However, the state of the impure soil body was not static. During the days he was under the impure earth reincarnation, he did a thorough inspection of his impure earth physique. He found that the sacrifice for the impure earth physique was slowly rotting away. He speculated that when the sacrificial offering completely decayed, his filthy earth body would also disintegrate along with it. And the simplest and most effective way to slow down the decay of an offering is to seal it in a coffin, like how Orochimaru dealt with Hashirama and Hashirama's impure earth form, and only come out when it's needed. Hyojin obviously couldn't seal himself in a coffin, so as time passed, his impure earth physique decayed every day. Because of the decay of the offerings, the strength of his impure earth physique would also decline. Therefore, Hyojin had to make all the preparations for his second ritual as soon as possible. Stone of Grayer, thinking of the task that Ningxi was performing, Hyojin's figure flashed and disappeared. Inside the underground palace, Ningxi, who had prepared for a hard battle, was surprised. He didn't expect that the seemingly sturdy and well-equipped alien warriors would be so vulnerable. At this time, the battle in the underground palace was still going on. The most powerful of the foreign races was undoubtedly their leader, Hyde. Aside from him, the 3 female armored knights and the golden-haired youth, Timsy, who had been standing by Hyde's side, were also quite powerful. In detail, Camilla, who could transform her body into a bat form, Renka, who could transform into an ape form, and Kazuo, who could transform into a werewolf form, these 3 female knights all had the destructive power of a Jonin. In the original timeline, Renka was able to fight back and forth with Gaara, who was about to become the 5th Kazekage. He even broke into Gaara's absolute defense at one point, and Camilla also briefly suppressed Kankuro. As for the blonde boy Timsy, who had the stone of Grayer embedded in his body, he was even stronger. In terms of destructive power and recovery, he was even comparable to some elite Jonins. This was also the reason why the aliens led by Hyde didn't put ninjas in their eyes. However, this time they obviously had the wrong idea. Whether it was Guy and Ningxi in Kai's team, or Kakuzu and Haido in the Akatsuki organization, they weren't ordinary ninjas, and these aliens weren't a match for these ninjas in terms of tactical skills and combat experience. Therefore, except for Hyde, who didn't make a move, the other aliens were quickly defeated by Kaiban and the Akatsuki organization. Looking at his subordinates on the ground, Hyde's face was filled with horror. Haido, who was carrying the bloody moon scythe, licked his lips and said with a mocking expression, "Hey, do you have some misunderstanding about us ninjas?" Hyde was shocked and angry, and he suddenly tore off the robe on his body. Instantly, Hyde, the leader of the aliens, changed his body like the 3 female knights, and 4 red balls appeared behind him. Truth-seeking ball? Mai's side and the Akatsuki organization were both shocked, and their eyes immediately gathered on the red balls behind Hyde. However, they soon discovered that the 4 red balls floating behind Hyde only looked like the truth-seeking ball, but they didn't have the power of the real truth-seeking ball. Taking advantage of the short moment of surprise, Hyde's figure flashed, and he suddenly appeared beside Heian, who was hiding in a corner and shivering. Then, he grabbed Heian's collar and twisted him up. "If you want to live, tell me quickly, where is the stone of Greyer mine?" "It's there." Old Heian, who couldn't breathe after his collar was tightened, could only point above his head. Hyde immediately threw Old Man Heian to the ground, then leaped up. The 4 red balls behind him instantly turned into 4 black wings, carrying him into the air. Then, Hyde stretched out his right hand towards the place where Old Heian had pointed. Boom! In an instant, a loud explosion sounded, and the place where Hyde's right hand was pointing suddenly exploded violently. It turned out that not only did Hyde have the ability to change his body like the 3 female knights, but he also had a stone of Greyer embedded in the back of his right hand. As Hyde used the stone of Greyer to attack, the stone wall at the top of the palace suddenly broke open, and as pieces of bricks fell, the light green mine inside was revealed. The stone of Greyer mine? At this moment, everyone in the underground palace, including Hyde who was flying in the air, looked at the stone of Greyer mine hidden in the brick wall. Here's the first update, asking for recommendation votes on Monday. It's nothing, please everyone. Here's the first update, asking for recommendation votes on Monday. It's nothing, please everyone. End of this chapter. Chapter 12:23. As the rubble on the walls of the palace gradually peeled off, more and more of the stone of Greyer vein hidden behind the walls were revealed. Everyone looked up and found that the stone of Greyer vein was light green, like agate or emerald. The whole body was emitting a bright halo, illuminating the dim underground palace. Is this the true power of the stone of Greyer? I feel it. I feel a steady stream of power pouring into my body. Ha ha, this feeling is great. All of a sudden, Hyde burst out laughing. It was obvious that due to the Greyer stone that was embedded on the back of his right hand, after the brick wall that sealed the mineral vein was broken, the mineral vein that was hidden in the brick wall had a strong resonance with the Greyer stone on the back of his hand. Therefore, the huge amount of chakra contained in the vein, through the stone of Greyer on the back of his hand, continuously poured into his body. Not only Hyde, but the other blond boy Timsy, who had a stone of Greyer embedded in his body, also stood up from the ground. Huh? Guy saw this, and a trace of surprise flashed on his face. This was because this blond boy Timsy was knocked down by him. Just like Ningxi, because Hyde's tone was too arrogant, Guy mistakenly thought that these people were very strong, so he opened the 4th gate of the 8 inner hidden gates, the Gate of Pain, as soon as he attacked. However, after exchanging blows, he realized that these aliens were not as strong as he had imagined, so he hurriedly adjusted the strength of his attacks. Even so, he still heavily injured the golden-haired young man, Timsy, and broke several of his ribs. Based on Guy's experience, it was impossible for the other party to get up after such a serious injury, but now the other party stood up as if nothing happened. Ningxi, who had activated the state of Byakugan, quickly warned everyone, "Everyone be careful, the chakra in their bodies suddenly became stronger, and it's still rapidly increasing." With the insight of Hyojin's Tenseigan, the changes in Hyde and Timsi's bodies naturally couldn't be hidden from Ningxi. But Ningxi didn't expect that the chakra in their bodies would soar to this point in just a few seconds, almost 10 times more than the original base. On the other side, Kakuzu of the Akatsuki organization carefully observed and said, "This stone of Greyer mine is really extraordinary." Although he didn't use Byakugan, and couldn't directly observe the changes in Hyde and Timsi's chakra, with his experience, it wasn't difficult to notice that the chakra in their bodies was skyrocketing. Fei Duan, who had always been lawless, stared at the mighty Hyde in the sky and curled his lips. "TSK, that guy is really annoying when he's shouting in the sky." Ha ha ha, Hyde was still laughing unscrupulously at this moment. The chakra that was poured into his body by the stone of Greyer mine even overflowed at this moment, forming a thick light green mist that surrounded him in a form visible to the naked eye. And as the chakra continued to skyrocket, Hyde's power also became stronger. "I am God." Hyde, who was floating in the air, slowly opened his arms. At this time, there was no longer panic in his eyes, instead, it was endless madness. He had never had such great power, no, he had never even imagined such great power. Next to the stone of Greyer mine, under the impact of this power, he felt that he was no longer a human, but a high and mighty god. Old Man Heian, who fell to the ground and trembled, saw that the stone of Greyer mine was finally exposed. His spirit suddenly collapsed, and he shouted, "It's over, it's all over. This is not a power that we insignificant humans can covet. The whole world will be destroyed because of your greed." Ha ha. After laughing for a while, Hyde said to the group of ninjas below, "Do you feel fear, you lowly ninjas?" Looking at Old Man Heian, who seemed to have collapsed as if the end of the world had come, and then looking at the arrogant Hyde flying in the air, whether it was Mai's side or the Akatsuki's side, they all had a strange expression. Hyde then shouted, "Now I will let you feel the power of God." Whoosh! Before Hyde's voice fell, a purple lightning flashed across his body. Immediately after that, Hyde, who had been brimming with energy just a moment ago, suddenly froze. The 4 wings on his back shattered into dust, and he fell from the sky, crashing heavily onto the ground with a loud boom. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! At this time, with a burst of wind, a few figures flashed into the underground palace from the gap in the wall. Ningxi turned his head and looked, and was surprised to find that the figures that suddenly appeared were not bystanders, but Sasuke, Naruto, Syue, and Sakura led by Kakashi. Sasuke, whose palm was still shining with purple lightning, curled his lips at Hyde, who had fallen to the ground. "Who is that idiot?" Obviously, it was Sasuke who had used the purple lightning to instantly kill Hyde. They had originally followed the marks left by Kaiban and explored all the way down, but suddenly heard Hyde shouting that he was God, so they couldn't help but give Hyde a purple lightning 1,000 birds. But they didn't expect Hyde to be so weak that he was sent flying in one move. All the demonic humans in the underground palace were shocked. They could not imagine that their leader, who was so powerful that he was almost suffocating, would be knocked down by a 13 or 14-year-old boy who suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Old Man Heian, who was still muttering, "It's all over," stared dumbfoundedly at Hyde, who had fallen to the ground. For a moment, he also shut his mouth. No, it shouldn't be like this. Without a doubt, the scene of Hyde being instantly knocked down by Sasuke, who had obtained the power of the stone of Greyer mine, was far beyond his expectation. In his mind, Hyde, who had obtained the power of the stone of Greyer mine, should be invincible, and he shouldn't be knocked down like a dead dog on the ground. Guy asked Kakashi, "Why are you guys here?" Kakashi shrugged, then looked at the Akatsuki organization's Kakazu, and said, "We can't be passive all the time. Since we found the Akatsuki organization's whereabouts this time, it's time to take the initiative to attack." After receiving the information from Guy, knowing that the Akatsuki organizations Kakazu and Haido were involved in this incident, the village immediately realized that this was an opportunity to capture the Akatsuki members and find out more about them, so they immediately sent out Kakashi's men. This was because only Kakashi, who had mastered the Flying Thunder God technique, could reach the scene in a very short time and support Kaiban to complete this capture mission. Listening to Kakashi's words, not only did Kakazu and Haido not feel nervous, but the corners of their mouths slightly curled up. Boom! At this moment, a big hole exploded on the other side of the wall, and Nagato, who was wearing the Akatsuki Red Cloud uniform, slowly walked into the underground palace. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 12-24. Chong. Nagato? As the red-haired Nagato wearing the Akatsuki Red Cloud suit slowly walked into the underground palace, everyone on Mai's side was shocked and panicked. Kakashi's action this time is undoubtedly a risk for the 5 great shinobi villages, because the Akatsuki organization's intention to destroy the 5 great shinobi villages is too firm, and there is no possibility of reconciliation between the two sides. Therefore, instead of passively waiting for the Akatsuki organization to launch a surprise attack every time, it's better to take the initiative and capture 1 or 2 members of the Akatsuki organization through a decisive and unexpected action. Of course, the reason why the village had decided to let Kakashi's squad carry out this risky operation was because the village had decided to let Kakashi's squad carry out this adventure. In addition to Kakashi being the only ninja in the village who can use the Flying Thunder God jutsu freely, the strength of Naruto, Sasuke, and even Satsuki are also important factors to consider. Combat experience aside, both Naruto and Sasuke had officially entered the ranks of Kage-class elites, while Seiyu in Sage Mode had immeasurable potential. Together with Kakashi, who was acting as Naruto's agent, it could be said that Kakashi's class was now the strongest class in Kimura. Originally, he thought that the only enemies he had to deal with were Kakuzu and Hyuden. With Kakashi, San and Kaiban's strength, the probability of success is very high, and once they succeed, it will be very difficult for the Akatsuki to catch up with Kakashi, San who has mastered the Flying Thunder God technique. However, just as Kakashi's squad arrived at the battlefield, the leader of the Akatsuki, Nagato, appeared. Hyde, who had just been knocked down by Sasuke's 1,000 purple lightning birds, struggled to get up from the ground. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! At this moment, he was shocked and angry. He never thought that his body, which was as hard as steel after the mutation, would actually be unable to resist the opponent's purple lightning. And Sasuke's attack just happened to shatter the Stone of Grail, inlaid on the back of his right hand. Without the Stone of Grail as a medium, the resonance between him and the mineral veins around him was immediately interrupted, and the chakra that lingered around him quickly collapsed. He fell from heaven to hell all of a sudden, which made Hyde extremely angry. However, just as he looked fearfully at Sasuke, who had knocked him down, he discovered that the ridiculously strong youth was also looking fearfully at the other side. Following Sasuke's gaze, Hyde quickly turned his head and looked over. Amidst the smoke and dust, another ninja wearing the Akatsuki Red Cloud suit slowly walked into the underground palace. At this time, the other aliens in the palace also gathered around the injured Hyde. Seeing the strange ninja slowly walking into the underground palace, as well as the horrified expression on the faces of the Mai squad, the aliens immediately realized that this Akatsuki ninja who suddenly appeared must not be simple. Soon, Nagato passed through the smoke and dust and arrived in the hall. Huh? Why is it the Byakugan? Am I seeing it right? When they saw the eyes in Nagato's eye sockets, the Mai squad couldn't help but exclaim. Because at this time, the eyes in Nagato's eye sockets are not his Rinnegan, but the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan. But even so, no one dares to underestimate Nagato. Even the arrogant Sasuke is no exception. The thought that flashed in everyone's mind was that Nagato suddenly changed the Rinnegan to the Byakugan. There must be some conspiracy. And Ningxi, who knows that the Byakugan can evolve into the Tenseigan, is even more shocked at this time, thinking that Nagato, the leader of the Akatsuki organization, has his eyes on the Tenseigan. Nagato ignored the My Squad. He didn't even care about the Nine Tails' Jinchuriki Naruto. Instead, he looked at the blonde alien teenager in front of Hyde, who was in a state of resonance with the Grayer stone mine. Not bad chakra. After a moment, Nagato gave his evaluation, then moved his eyes up and looked at the Grayer stone mine above his head. Including Hyde, all the aliens at this moment dare not underestimate the ninjas, because they found that the strong individuals of the ninjas are completely beyond their definition of human beings. Attack! At this moment Kakashi shouted. Swish! Almost at the same time, Sasuke opened the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan and launched the Susanoo. Naruto opened the Golden Nine Tails Chakra mode, and Satsuki also opened the Sage mode. In an instant, several terrifying chakra burst out in the underground palace, shocking the aliens and Old Man Heian, who was hiding on the side. Are they still human? Even the alien blonde teenager Timsy, who was resonating with the Grayer stone mine, was stunned. Naruto, Satsuki, cover me! Sasuke shouted, and then took the lead in activating the Susanoo to attack Nagato. He knew very well that it was useless to be timid in the face of Nagato. Only by fighting with all his strength could he have a chance of survival. At this time, Nagato withdrew his gaze from the mine and saw Sasuke controlling the Susanoo to rush over. He immediately put his hands together and shouted, Flower Tree World Descend! Rumble! In an instant, as Nagato launched the wood-release ninjutsu, countless branches and branches grew out of the cracks in the bricks of the underground palace, and then quickly became thicker and larger. In the blink of an eye, the huge underground palace was filled with these vigorous branches and branches. In such a great change, the earth seemed to be shaking like an earthquake. The underground palace was even more fragmented, the stone pillars collapsed one after another, and the brick walls peeled off in pieces. And the first to bear the brunt was naturally Sasuke's Susanoo. The almost complete Susanoo was suddenly submerged by the sea of trees, and then was entangled by countless thick branches and fell to the ground, unable to move. Sasuke! Seeing that Sasuke and Susanoo were submerged by the sea of trees, Naruto in the Nine Tails Chakra mode exclaimed, and then his figure flashed and rushed forward. Satsuki, who had entered the Sage mode, followed closely behind and followed Naruto. At this time, Naruto did not use the multiple shadow doppelganger technique, but used the Nine Tails Chakra mode, chakra arms to stretch out 8 chakra arms at once, and 2 of them helped each other, condensing 4 Rasengan along the way to clear the trees, trying to rescue Sasuke, who was trapped by the sea of trees. Satsuki also used the hidden shadow snake hand to help Naruto clear the surrounding trees. With the cooperation of the two, they quickly cleared the trees all the way, and they were about to get close to Sasuke, who was trapped by the sea of trees. Swoosh, 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 but at this moment, a golden chain with a glowing halo whistled through the layers of the sea of trees, accurately locking Naruto and Satsuki. Third update, please recommend votes, monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who tipped today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 12:25. This, Naruto, who was entangled in the golden chain, was taken aback. He recognized that this was the ninjutsu that his mother had used to help him subdue the Nine Tails in the space of consciousness. He knew that this ninjutsu was powerful, so he subconsciously tried to break these chains. However, the more he struggled, the tighter these golden chains became. He could smash a wall and tear down a building with a light touch in the Nine Tails Chakra mode, but under the restraint of the golden chain, he couldn't exert it at all. and the power of the tailed beast in his body seemed to be suppressed by the golden chain. Even the Nine Tails chakra mode, that he had long been proficient in, was faintly unable to maintain at this moment. Compared to Naruto, Suiyue's experience was not much better. The angle of these golden chains was very tricky. Not only were they all blind spots in the gaps of the Sea of Trees, but there was also the violent chakra of the Sea of Trees that interfered with the perception, so he couldn't avoid the golden chains and was tied up. Not only Naruto and Suiyue, but also Kakashi and Guy, who were also troubled by the attack of the Sea of Trees, were also entangled by the golden chains that suddenly emerged from the gaps of the Sea of Trees. Oh no! Kakashi was shocked. Unlike others, he, who was known as the Copy Ninja, recognized this powerful sealing technique of the Uzumaki clan at a glance. He knew that this was not a sealing technique for ordinary ninjas, but a sealing technique used to subdue more terrifying enemies, such as the tailed beast. At this time, Nagato, who was standing on a growing branch, revealed his figure from the Sea of Trees. The people who were entangled by the golden chains looked up and suddenly found that the source of the golden chains that entangled them was Nagato himself. There is no doubt that this King Kong lock was cast by Nagato. After losing the Eyes of Reincarnation, Nagato no longer had the Outer Tao Demon statue, the 6 Paths of Pain, and the powerful eye techniques of the Eyes of Reincarnation. But this did not mean that Nagato had completely lost his power. It was true that his power had been severely weakened, but his would escape, which was not inferior to the first generation, and the Maelstrom family's sealing techniques that he had painstakingly trained to deal with God's organization were still preserved. Strictly speaking, Nagato wasn't a tactical genius. In terms of actual combat, although he wasn't the weakest, he wasn't outstanding either. He couldn't be compared to tactical geniuses like Minato, Kakashi, and Itachi. In the past, his victories were almost all achieved by relying on his terrifying strength to forcefully crush his opponent. But once he encountered an opponent with strength close to his own, he would definitely be defeated. For example, Hyojin and Otsutsuki Samurai. He would reveal various problems such as hesitation, and wavering. The biggest problem was his choice of moves and battle tactics. Of course, this was also related to the fact that he had mastered too many moves in the past and it was too complicated. In the past, he not only had to control his own body, but he also had to control the 6 Paths of Pain. He was in a state of multitasking for a long time, and he wasn't a genius in this area, so his grasp of the details naturally had a lot of flaws. Now that he didn't have the Eyes of Reincarnation, the Outer Tao Demon statue, the 6 Paths of Pain, and the various abilities brought by the Eyes of Reincarnation, he could instead focus on the wood release and sealing techniques and grasp the opportunity more accurately than before. Just now, he judged the threat of Sasuke and decisively used the powerful wood-release ninjutsu Descent of the Flower World to suppress all the Mai ninjas present, and then by using the Sea of Trees to block the vision and interfere with Chakra's judgment, he quietly used the King Kong seal and instantly sealed Kakashi, Guy, Naruto, and Suiyue. The strength of the sealing technique lies in the suppression of chakra. Kushina, who had little chakra left in the dying state, used the diamond lock to temporarily trap the undivided Kyuubi, not to mention Nagato, who is a powerful Uzumaki clansman with a sage body close to the 6 Path Sages. So under the King Kong seal cast by Nagato, Kakashi, Guy, Naruto, and Suiyue were all easily suppressed. Even Naruto's 9 Tails chakra mode and Suiyue's sage mode were dispelled under the interference of the King Kong seal. Damn it! Seeing that the situation was critical, Sasuke, who was trapped in the Sea of Trees, did not care about accidentally injuring himself. He immediately cast Amaterasu at the endless Sea of Trees. Whoosh! With the activation of Sasuke's pupil power, a black flame appeared on the growing branches, then quickly spread, burning into a large black flame. However, although these black flames burned a lot of branches, more branches were still growing endlessly. Although the black flames can't be extinguished, the speed of burning is obviously not as fast as the growth of the branches. Nagato didn't care about the Amaterasu launched by Sasuke and continued to use wood release. This is obviously not the first time that Amaterasu and wood release have competed. When Sasuke used Amaterasu in the Fourth Shinobi War, Edo Tensei Naruto not only recognized it at a glance, but also commented on the power of Amaterasu. It can be seen that Edo Tensei Naruto must have seen Amaterasu before his death. In other words, among the Uchiha and Madara brothers who opened the Manjikyu Sharingan in that era, one of them must have used Amaterasu. If it wasn't Madara, then it must be Madara's younger brother, Uchiha Izuna. At that time, the Uchiha clan was completely suppressed by the Senju clan who had Hashirama. As the clan leader, Madara Uchiha was defeated several times in the hands of Hashirama, so in that era, Amaterasu should have fought with wood release, and according to the result of Madara's defeat, Amaterasu was undoubtedly at a disadvantage in the contest with wood release. The current Nagato not only completely inherited the physique of Hashirama, but he also has the Uzumaki sage body that Hashirama didn't have. His physique is close to that of Otsutsuki Azura, who inherited the Sage of the Six Path. Therefore, his wood release is not weaker than Hashirama's. In the shinobi world, perhaps only Hashirama's wood release in Sage mode is slightly stronger than him. Therefore, the endless and crazy growth of the trees quickly suppressed Amaterasu, binding Sasuke's Susanoo to the point that he couldn't move. And with the continuous activation of the advent of the flower tree world, huge flower buds emerged from the wildly growing branches and vines. Knowing that these budding flowers are the most terrifying killer move of the advent of the flower tree world, Kakashi was shocked and shouted, quickly destroy those flower buds." At this time, on Mai's side, Kakashi, Guy, Naruto, and Satsuki were all locked by the diamond lock, while Sasuke was trapped in the sea of trees and couldn't break free for a while. The only ones who were still free were Ningxi, Xiaoli, Tian, and Sakura, who were ignored by Nagato. I'm asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 12:26. Walala, looking at the overwhelming amount of branches rushing towards them and listening to Kakashi's desperate shout in their ears, Ningxi, Xiaoli, Tian, and Sakura all looked at each other in dismay. It has to be said that in a relatively closed environment, the control ability of wood release is simply too terrifying. Although this underground palace is very spacious, but under the powerful wood release ninjutsu of the scale of descent of the flower tree world, in just a blink of an eye, the spacious palace became crowded and narrow. There is not much space to move around, and it is impossible to avoid the sharpness by retreating for a short period of time like when fighting on the ground. Therefore, although they were not targeted by Nagato's attack, Ningxi, Xiaoli, Tian, and Sakura were more or less confused. Compared to the other three, Ningxi is undoubtedly much calmer. But he is also thinking more than the others. The other companions were at most disturbed by the battle situation in front of them, but he fell into a great panic because of the sudden appearance of Nagato and the Byakugan in Nagato's eye sockets. Among the people present, only he knows that the only person in the shinobi world who can keep the Akatsuki leader Nagato in check, Hyojin, is still in a dead state. The other companions may be looking forward to the arrival of the Amatsukami leader Yama, but only he knows that even if Sensei comes, with Sensei's current state, he may not be able to suppress the Akatsuki leader Nagato. In addition, the Byakugan in Nagato's eye sockets also makes him particularly uneasy. He can't help but wonder if Nagato already knows the secret of the Tenseigan, so he is trying to use the Byakugan to spy on the treasure of the Hyuga clan. Because of these thoughts, he hesitated and hesitated during the battle, for fear of exposing his Tenseigan and causing unpredictable consequences. However, due to his hesitation and slow movements, he was able to avoid Nagato's first round of targeted attack. Xiaoli, Tian, and Sakura didn't have as many worries as Ningxi. After regaining his composure, Xiaoli immediately erupted with the 8 inner hidden gates, opening the 4th gate of pain. Originally, he could have opened the 5th gate of stop, but considering that he had to destroy too many flower buds, it would be difficult for his body to maintain the gate of stop for too long. Thus, he only opened the 4th gate of pain. Swish, almost at the same instant he opened the pain gate, literally brought along a wave of air, and pounced toward the flower bud closest to him. At this time, Tian also took off the big scroll she had been carrying on her back, and then suddenly tore it open and unlocked the seal in the scroll. In an instant, countless kunai wrapped in detonation talismans shot out from the scroll, facing the rolling sea of trees. As a medical ninja, Sakura has not yet learned the strange power of Tsunade, so it is useless in this situation, so she had to rescue the old man and consciously hide in the corner. Boom! Boom! Accompanied by a burst of roars, under the cover of Tenzin's ninja tools, Xiao Li, who had opened the 8 inner gates, quickly broke into the forest and kicked a flower bud. At this moment, whether it is Sasuke who is trapped in the sea of trees, or Kakashi, Guy, Naruto, and Suyue who are sealed by the diamond seal, or the aliens who are forced into the corner, all looked at Xiaoli. "It's all up to you, Xiaoli," Naruto shouted. The leader of the aliens, Hyde, also realized that the flower buds growing in the sea of trees may contain great danger through Mai's actions. He hurriedly shouted to the blonde boy Timsy, who was guarding in front of him, "Timsy, go and destroy those flowers." The blonde boy Timsy, who was still in a state of resonance with the surrounding stone of grayer mineral vein and surrounded by a huge amount of chakra, immediately waved his sword and rushed into the sea of trees. On one side is Xiaoli, who has opened the 8 inner hidden gates, and on the other side is Timsy, who is resonating with the stone of grayer mineral vein. Both of them aimed at the flower buds that are about to bloom in the sea of trees at the same time. However, standing in the middle of the sea of trees, Nagato didn't pay too much attention to these two. He just waved his hand, and the endless sea of trees attacked them. In this relatively narrow space, whether it is Xiaoli or Timsy, there is no way to deal with the endless sea of trees. Every time they destroy a tree in front of them, 10 or even more trees will immediately fill their vision. Soon, like Sasuke, they are trapped in the sea of trees. Not to mention destroying those flowers that are about to bloom, it is very difficult for them to even protect themselves. Seeing that Xiaoli's last burst of power has failed, Kakashi suddenly felt a wave of despair. The most important point of the descent of the flower tree world is that there are more flower buds in the sea of trees. Once those flower buds bloom, the flowers will release a powerful psychedelic pollen. In this closed environment, as long as the flower buds bloom, it means that the battle is over. Is this the power of a ninja? No, this is the power that only a god can have. The leader of the mutated tribe, Hyde, was also shocked at this moment. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, he couldn't imagine that there is such a powerful individual in the world. Looking at the godlike Nagato standing quietly in the sea of trees, he even had an inexplicable sense of absurdity about his previous ambitions. He thought that as long as he found the grayer vein, he would be invincible and the whole world would tremble in his shadow, but now he understood how ridiculous all of this was. This Chapter 12:27. No one had expected things to turn out this way. Everyone was dumbfounded as they watched the rapidly growing sea of trees being repelled by an invisible force and piled up in a corner. They were slowly squeezed into the wall and into the crevice of the mountain. What was even more unbelievable was that the person who made this attack was not someone else, but Ningxi, whom they were familiar with. Crack Sasuke, who got rid of the sea of trees, hurriedly used Susanoo to cut the golden chain that bound Kakashi, Guy, Naruto, and Suyue, and then looked at Ningxi in surprise. At this time, Niji was surrounded by a mass of purple dragon-shaped phantasm, and the dragon-shaped phantasm was filled with a surging chakra. Its power was not inferior to the Grell mineral vein above his head. Sasuke opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. Kakashi, like Sasuke, was full of doubts. He recognized the dragon-shaped phantom around Ningxi at a glance. It belongs to Hyojin's Ryumyaku chakra, but he didn't understand how the Ryumyaku got to Ningxi. Great Ningxi! Naruto, who was free, shouted excitedly. And Ningxi, who was panting lightly, calmed down and then quickly shouted, "Everyone, don't be careless, the enemy has not been killed yet." Although his heart was full of questions, Kakashi also knew that dealing with the leader of the Akatsuki, Nagato, was the most important thing at the moment, so he put away his scattered thoughts and focused on the opposite side. At the other end of the hall, Nagato, who was suddenly attacked, appeared from the sea of trees after a while. With a light leap, Kuroto jumped out of the sea of trees and landed on the cracked floor tiles of the palace, then looked at Niji suspiciously and asked, "Are you from the Hyuga clan? Why can you use Shinra Tensei?" Although the Ryumyaku chakra that lingered around Niji's body was terrifying, it wasn't enough to attract Nagato's attention. What really caught Nagato's attention was that the seemingly ordinary Niji was able to use a technique similar to the Rinnegan Shinra Tensei. After losing the Rinnegan, even Kuroto couldn't use such Shinra Tensei. Sasuke, Naruto, and even Xiaoli, Tian, and Sakura looked at Ningxi. They were shocked by the Ryumyaku chakra on Ningxi, but also surprised that Ningxi could use the Shinra Tensei. Feeling the gazes of his enemies and companions at the same time, Ningxi was slightly nervous. What he is most worried about now is that the Tenseigan will be exposing the secret that Hyojin-sensei is dead, because once the Akatsuki learns that the leader of Amatsukami, Yama, is dead, the shinobi world will immediately usher in a catastrophe. Guy quickly said, "Ningxi, don't answer him." Kakashi also echoed, "Let's talk about it after we get back." Rumble, suddenly, a loud noise echoed in the underground palace. The sea of trees that was squeezed into a ball by the invisible repulsive force collapsed a large part of the rock wall, causing the structure of the mountain to be destroyed, causing the entire palace to shake. And as the shaking continued, more and more stone pillars in the underground palace began to collapse, and without the support of these stone pillars, the bricks at the dome began to peel off, and finally, the grayer vein that was previously covered by the bricks was completely revealed. In an instant, the light blue fluorescence of the grayer vein sprinkled all over the palace. At the same time, as the sealed palace collapsed little by little, the grayer vein that had been in a sealed state finally broke free from the seal, and the whole thing became restless. Clatter soon, there was a sound of water flowing from the grayer vein, located at the dome of the palace. Everyone in the palace looked up and saw a large amount of chakra overflowing from the restless grayer vein, and then gradually condensed together, forming a cloud of crystallized liquid filled with mist. It looked like a fluorescent spring water. Old Man Heian, who was next to Sakura, was shocked when he saw this. That is the source of life of the grayer vein. Sakura, who was a little unstable in the shaking, hurriedly asked, "What's going on?" Old Man Heian said in a panic, "The seal. The seal has been broken, the grayer vein is about to go out of control." Sakura asked, "What will happen after it goes out of control?" Old Man Heian shook his head. "I don't know, but judging from the scale of the destroyed empire, half of the mainland may be destroyed." "Humph!" Sasuke snorted disdainfully when he heard this, and then burst out his Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil power, and activated Susanoo to its complete form. In his opinion, although the power of the grayer vein is not bad, it is far from being able to destroy half of the mainland, and compared to the mine that is out of control above his head, he feels that the leader of the Akatsuki organization, Nagato, is a bigger threat. Naruto no longer had any scruples, and completely broke out the Nine Tails chakra. In the blink of an eye, the violent and overbearing chakra of the Nine Tails suddenly filled the entire space. The aliens who were hiding in another corner were completely broken at this time. As the leader, Hyde even almost forgot the purpose of his trip, because the grayer vein that is out of control above his head made him tremble from the bottom of his heart. Now there is no need for anyone to remind him. He knows that this place is about to be finished, and listening to Old Man Heian just now, the loss of control of the grayer vein will lead to the destruction of half of the mainland. However, he did not dare to act rashly, because Ningxi, who is surrounded by the dragon vein, Sasuke, who launched Susanoo, and Naruto, who broke out the power of Nine Tails, all have terrifying power that is not inferior to the grayer vein that is out of control above his head, which makes him feel a little confused, because he doesn't know whether the consequences of the grayer vein going out of control is more serious or the consequences of angering these ninjas. On the other side of the palace, Nagato, who suppressed Mai and the others with his own strength, made Hyde even more frightened. He can't imagine that there is such a powerful human in the world, in the face of such a terrifying enemy. He feels that his ambition to rule the world is better carried out in his dreams. Splash! At this moment, the crystallized liquid chakra overflowed from the grayer vein above their heads, to the point that the vein could not hold it, so it poured down like a waterfall, splashing towards the palace. Everyone in the palace, including Nagato, was drenched by the crystallized liquid of the grayer vein. Nagato, who was bathed in the crystallized liquid, suddenly narrowed his eyes, and his expression changed. Not only Nagato, but Mai and the others were also shocked, because they were surprised to find that a surge of life force was pouring into their bodies from all directions. It was only at this moment that everyone realized what Old Man Heian meant when he shouted, "Source of life." The first update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 12:28. With the loss of control of the grayer mineral load, everyone in the underground palace was bathed in the waterfall composed of chakra crystal liquid that overflowed from the mineral load above their heads. And this cyan chakra crystal liquid with a sparkling halo is like a stream of water, like a rainbow, pouring down from the broken dome of the palace, illuminating the broken palace with a variety of colors. Everyone who was drenched was surprised to find that their bodies seemed to have undergone magical changes. Especially the aliens who were injured, as well as Mai and others who were injured by Nagato's ninjutsu just now, they found that when their wounds were drenched with the chakra crystal liquid of the grayer mineral load, their wounds healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Kakashi immediately said, "This chakra can heal injuries. Is this the recovery of life?" Old Man Heian, who was not injured, continued to say with emotion, "I feel that my body seems to have become younger." Everyone was shocked when they heard this, and immediately felt it carefully. Soon, everyone found that not only their injuries were healed, but even some of the hidden injuries in their bodies, or strained muscles, joints, etc., after being drenched with the chakra crystal liquid of the grayer mineral load, they have also recovered to varying degrees. It seems that, as Old Man Heian said, this is the recovery of life. Ningxi looked at the grayer mineral load above his head in surprise. At this moment, he felt a lot more comfortable, and the burden of the Tenseigan in his eye socket was not as strenuous as before. Sasuke on the side covered his eyes and secretly thought in his heart, "Hey, what's going on? Why is my eternal Manjikyu Sharingan restless?" Humph. At this time, the Nine Tails sealed in Naruto's body suddenly opened his eyes and spat lightly, and immediately closed his eyes again, showing a trace of enjoyment on his face, and pretended to sleep. Kakashi and Guy looked at each other, and then saw the look of surprise in each other's eyes. As ninjas who have experienced the Third Shinobi World War, the two of them have suffered countless injuries, big and small. Although those injuries have healed, there are still some hidden injuries left, coupled with some muscle and joint strain caused by long-term training. Although these won't affect their strength for the time being, but as they grow older, it's hard to say what will happen in the future. This is also the reason why the strength of 3 generations Naruto declined so seriously. As long as there is no improvement in the level of life, then age is the biggest enemy of a ninja. Even the 3 generations Naruto, who is known as Dr. Ninjutsu, Hanzo, who is known as Demigod, and other strong ninjas who once stood at the peak of the shinobi world are no exception, because the decline of life is the law of nature, and it is not something that can be reversed by ordinary medical ninjutsu. But at this time, Kakashi and Guy were pleasantly surprised to find that their bodies seemed to have been reborn, and the hidden injuries and strain in their bodies were all healed in the chakra crystal liquid of the grayer mineral vein. Even Nagato, who has always been indifferent, showed a hint of surprise on his face at this time, and looked at the grayer mineral vein above his head with a more solemn gaze. Although because of his physique, there are no hidden injuries and strain in his body, but under the stimulation of the high-purity chakra crystal liquid of the grayer mineral vein, he felt that the Byakugan in his eye socket, which has not been transplanted recently, is restless. Because he has the Rinnegan, and obtained the strength close to the 6 paths level, he knew that this restlessness is not without reason. The only explanation is that his ocular power is increasing, and this restlessness has a tendency to become more and more intense, as if it is at a certain critical point. Just when everyone was still immersed in joy, suddenly, a scream came from the side of the mutated race. Everyone looked towards the direction of the sound and found that a heavily armored mutated race's body suddenly swelled up, and the originally burly body has now completely become an inflated balloon. Ningxi, who has the Tenseigan, immediately said, "He can't bear it anymore." Bang! As soon as Ningxi's voice fell, the inflated mutated race exploded into a pool of flesh and blood. Everyone now knows that the chakra crystal liquid of the grayer mineral vein is not harmless. If the body absorbs too much and can't bear it, it will explode and die. In an instant, the original joy turned into nervousness. The Akatsuki and the mutated race, the 3 sides are once again facing each other. The grayer mineral vein above their heads is no longer a source of life, but a symbol of death. Everyone knows that there is a limit to one's endurance. As long as they continue to delay, they will inevitably explode and die like the mutated race just now. It's only a matter of time. But because of the existence of Nagato, no one dares to act rashly. Hyde, the leader of the mutated race, also realized that the red-haired Akatsuki ninja in front of him has not changed much from the beginning to the end. Even in the face of the out-of-control grayer mineral vein, is the key to break the current situation. Only if he takes the initiative to retreat, the people in the palace will have a chance to escape. Damn it, in the face of such horror, is he really not afraid at all? Hyde really can't understand why Nagato is so indifferent to the horror in front of him, and it is very likely that he will die here because of the existence of this strong person comparable to a god. Boom! Just when the atmosphere in the palace is so tense that it is almost suffocating, a big hole exploded in the rock wall above their heads, and then a figure slowly fell into the palace. Just when Hyde was about to look away from Nagato to see who is coming to die at this time, he unexpectedly found that Nagato, who has been calm all this time, changed his expression when he saw the person who came, and then his body shook, and he directly ran into the crack of the mountain and escaped. Not only Hyde, but all the mutated race people were stunned, and their faces were full of disbelief. The godlike red-haired ninja had actually escaped, and he escaped in such a panic. On the other side, when Mai and the others saw the figure of the person who came, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Even Sasuke, who is the proudest of them all, had a flash of joy in his eyes. And Ningxi, who has been tense all this time, also relaxed completely. Without a doubt, the figure who fell from the sky is not someone else, but Hyojin, who specially came to check out the grayer mineral vein. Of course, at this time, He is dressed as Yamato of Amatsukami, and he is still wearing the ghost mask on his face. After landing in the palace, Hyojin glanced at the direction in which Nagato escaped, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Obviously, he has already noticed that in Nagato's eye sockets are the Byakugan and not the Rinnegan. Then, he looked up at the grayer mineral vein above his head, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Interesting. Here is the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 12:29. Naturally, Hyojin was happy to see Nagato's retreat without a fight. He is still in the state of impure earth form at the moment, and he can't even enter the Tenseigan chakra mode, so if he really fights, he is not an opponent of Nagato at all. However, according to his observation, Nagato's state seems to be a little strange. The most obvious thing is that Nagato's eyes are not the Rinnegan, but a pair of Byakugan. This alone is far beyond his expectations and made him think a lot of things. However, at present, except for the internal members of the Akatsuki, the outside world does not know that the Akatsuki has actually been divided into two. On one side is the original leader Nagato, plus Konan, Kakuzu, and Hokuden, while the other side is Obsidian, Zetsu, and Mist Squad, who successfully attacked Nagato and obtained the Rinnegan. Although these two parties are hostile to each other, they both claim to be part of the Akatsuki organization, and they have not leaked any information about the Akatsuki organization to the outside world, so Hyojin, who didn't know about this matter, didn't think too much about it, but just like Ningxi, he naturally thought that Nagato has some new ideas or attempts after the last defeat. After all, Nagato has been in contact with Kuroto Aoki and Otsutsuki Samurai, and Hyojin can't tell how much Nagato knows about the Tenseigan. But now is obviously not a good time to explore why Nagato transplanted the Byakugan, so Hyojin converged his thoughts and turned his attention to the grayer mineral vein that is going out of control above his head. Frankly speaking, the amount of chakras contained in the grayer mineral vein is much more than he expected, and when he thought that he got such a high-quality chakra source for free, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. But soon, Kuroto frowned slightly. From the perspective of composition, the chakra in the grayer mineral vein is similar to the dragon vein chakra. Because it is buried deep in the ground, it continuously absorbs the energy of the dragon vein, so the chakra contains a lot of natural energy. It's just that in proportion, the natural energy in the grayer mineral vein is much less than that of the dragon vein, which actively absorbs natural energy. But unlike the dragon vein, the proportion of yang chakra in the grayer mineral vein is very high. In addition, there are a lot of water and earth chakra in it, so the overall chra attribute ratio is very similar to the chakra attribute ratio of the chakra chh. Therefore, just bathing in the chakra crystal liquid of the grayer mineral vein for a short while, Kuroto, who has the impure earth body, instinctively felt a burst of discomfort. It felt like he was naked under the sun. If he stayed for a long time, he would feel a burning sensation. So Hyojin immediately looked away and waved his hand at Mai and the others. "I'll take care of this. You guys can leave. Then I'll have to trouble you, sir." Kakashi bowed respectfully towards Kuroto, who was dressed in the attire of Amatsukami's Yama. In the face of the leader of Amatsukami, Kakashi didn't dare to argue at all. Sasuke, on the other hand, took a serious look at Yama. After confirming that Yama didn't have any intention of giving him a secret mission, Sasuke, who had secretly joined Amatsukami, left the underground palace with Kakashi. Just like Sasuke, Ningxi also stared at Hyojin for a while. Seeing that Hyojin did not look at him, he knew that Hyojin did not want to expose his identity, so he left with the others. In the blink of an eye, Mai and the others left the underground palace. As Mai and the others also left the underground palace, Only Hyojin and the group of aliens were left in the palace. Just as Hyojin glanced at the group of aliens, the aliens also looked at Hyojin in horror. They knew very well that the mysterious man wearing a black and gold-edged cloak and a grimace mask was definitely more terrifying than those powerful ninjas just now. Otherwise, those arrogant ninjas just now would not have fled so decisively, like mice seeing a cat. And those ninjas just now were already unimaginably strong, so they couldn't imagine how strong the mysterious man in front of them was. Haida, the leader of the aliens, swallowed his saliva and said to Hyojin with a smile, "Sir, we just entered this place by mistake. Since you want to deal with this place, we will leave first." After saying that, Haida stared at Hyojin and walked towards the crack that led to the ground. Hyojin smiled. "Who allowed you to leave?" Hearing this, all the aliens, including Haida, were stunned and their faces showed fear. Haida even asked with a trembling voice, "Sir, no sir, what do you want us to do? We are willing to serve you." Hyojin did not pay any more attention to this group of aliens. Instead, he raised his hands and began to form a hand seal. Kuroto wasn't interested in dealing with such a group of aliens. He just found out that the blonde boy Timsy among this group of aliens was somewhat different. It seemed that he could easily withstand the chakra crystallized liquid of the Grail mineral load pouring down from above his head, so he kept this group of aliens. Seeing that Hyojin did not pay any more attention to him, Haida was shocked and frightened. On one hand, he was worried about the Grail mineral load that had gone out of control, and on the other hand, he was worried that Hyojin would harm him. But since Hyojin did not say anything, he did not dare to leave without permission, so he could only stand there anxiously. At this moment, as Hyojin shouted, streaks of black sealing techniques flowed out from the crack of his palms that were pressed on the ground. Then, they quickly spread along the ground and the walls. In just a few short breaths, these sealing techniques that seemed to have spirituality were like streaks of black chains, entangling the grayer mineral load that had gone out of control above the palace. As the sealing techniques spread around, the surging grayer mineral load gradually calmed down, and the shaking of the ground also stopped. In the canyon, swoosh with a wind-breaking sound, Nagato rushed out of the underground and came to the surface. Xiaonan, who was guarding the surface, and Jiaodu, Fei Duan, and the others who had left the underground palace earlier quickly went up to him and asked with concern, "Nagato, are you okay? Yama seems to have gone down just now. Did you guys meet him?" Nagato, who was covering his eyes, said, "I met him, but just like last time, he did not chase after me." Xiaonan quickly asked, "What happened down there? Why did someone like him come too?" At first, Xiaonan did not care much about the grayer mineral load, but when she found out that even a powerhouse like Yama was attracted here, she immediately felt that the grayer mineral load might really be some kind of treasure. Feeling the fetal movement in his eye sockets, Nagato, who was a little dizzy, said, "We'll talk about this later, let's leave this place first. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes." Chapter 1230. After Nagato and the others left in a hurry, Kakashi and others also came out of the ground. As soon as his feet landed on the ground, Kakashi said, "Did you guys feel it? The shaking of the mountain seems to have stopped." Guy nodded. "Well, it did stop." Sakura, who escaped with old Heian, said, "It must be Yama who did something. He is a sage. It should be no problem for him to deal with the mineral vein that is out of control." Old Heian on the side opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but in the end, he wisely closed his mouth. In the warning passed down from generation to generation in their clan, this ruin is a forbidden place that must never be set foot in, and once an accident causes the grayer mineral vein in the ruin to go out of control, the only way to avoid the destruction of the world is to activate the ancient psychic array located in the underground palace of the ruin and send the out-of-control grayer mineral vein into the space-time crack. Only people with the bloodline of the ancient Empire royal family can activate the ancient psychic array located in the underground palace and send out the spacetime crack. Old Heian wanted to tell Mai and others that the blonde boy Tenseigan among the aliens is a descendant of their royal family. Because the body can contain Greyer stone, is something that can only be done with their royal bloodline, so only the blonde boy Tenseigan can stop the out-of-control Greyer mineral vein and prevent the destruction of the world. But when the words came to his mouth, he thought about it and swallowed it back. After seeing the strength of the ninjas, he has realized that the strength of today's ninjas has probably surpassed the empire established by their clan. And the mysterious person who entered the underground palace last was called Sage by the Konoha ninjas around him, so he felt that maybe he didn't need any royal bloodline at all, and he didn't need to summon any spacetime rift to quell this disaster, and the earth that stopped shaking at this time seemed to confirm his thoughts. Ningxi has no doubt that Hyojin can solve the out-of-control Greyer mineral vein, so the first thing he did when he came to the ground was to search for the whereabouts of the Akatsuki organization. After confirming that the Akatsuki organization has left the canyon, he turned off the Byakugan and said, "The Akatsuki organization has withdrawn." Kakashi looked at Ningxi with a deep meaning, and then said, "Let's leave as soon as possible." Everyone nodded, and then left the canyon with old Heian, who was still a little dizzy. In the underground palace, looking at the mysterious person, the palace stopped collapsing, the mountains stopped shaking, and even the out-of-control mineral vein gradually calmed down. Just a moment ago, there was an earth-shattering scene of doomsday, but in the blink of an eye, there were only a few clanging sounds of broken bricks and pebbles falling on the palace. Looking at each other, the eyes of the aliens also became more and more awed as they looked at Kuroto. At this time, Hyojin, who was standing in the center of the palace, clapped his hands. Sealing techniques can be said to be the most unreasonable technique in the shinobi world, and the four symbols seal is one of the sealing techniques developed by the Uzumaki clan specifically to deal with a large number of chakra, so even if the Greyer mineral vein is out of control, Hyojin can still temporarily seal it with the four symbols seal. After temporarily controlling the out-of-control Greyer mineral vein, Hyojin noticed the ancient formation on the floor in the center of the palace. Is this the ancient formation that can connect to the space-time rift? After thinking to himself, Hyojin thought to himself, "It seems that the ancient empire is still something." Just from this formation that can connect to the spacetime rift, it can be seen that the ancient empire has some skills, at least in the research of formations, they have their own unique method. After carefully recording the ancient formation on the floor, Hyojin raised his head and carefully observed the structure of the Greyer mineral vein above his head. Soon, he discovered that the so-called Greyer mineral vein is actually a huge crystal stone inlaid in the mountain. At first glance, the texture is somewhat similar to jadeite, but it is more transparent than jadeite, and its whole body is glowing with a bright light, just like a piece of jade under strong light. Rubbing his chin, Hyojin pondered about how to move this Greyer mineral vein. After experiencing the loss of control of the Greyer mineral vein, just now, an idea suddenly flashed in his mind. At the moment, he is lacking materials to construct an altar. If he can use the entire Greyer mineral vein as the altar for his next ritual, then he can not only solve the problem of the altar not being strong enough, but he can also use the huge amount of chakra contained in the Greyer mineral vein. This place has already been exposed. The Akatsuki organization and the 5 great shinobi villages know about this place, so I must move the entire Greyer mineral vein away. Thinking of this, Hyojin looked at the group of aliens who were huddled in the corner nervously. Seeing Hyojin looking at him, the leader of the aliens hurriedly said with a flattering smile, "My lord, if there is anything you need from us, please don't hesitate to ask." Hyojin directly ignored Hyde and walked in front of the blonde boy Tenseigan, glancing at the Greyer stone inlaid on Tenseigan's chest. Before this, His memory about the Greyer stone was very faint, but after arriving here and seeing the group of aliens with his own eyes, his memory gradually became clear. He now knows that the blond boy Timsey in front of him is a descendant of the ancient empire's royal family, and can barely be regarded as the legal owner of this ruin. As for the leader of the mutated race, Haida, he was just an ambitious bandit. After slaughtering Timsey's village with his own hands, he used the identity of Hyde and the slogan of building a utopia to bewitch Timsey and a group of teenagers who hate war and killing to work for him. Collecting his scattered thoughts, Hygen asked the aliens, "How much do you know about the Greyer stone?" The aliens all shook their heads, and the leader Hyde explained, "This is just a misunderstanding, we were affected by it and mistakenly entered this place." "Is that so?" The corner of Hygen's mouth twitched, and then he reached out to Hyde. Hyde was instantly shocked. "You. What do you want?" Including the blond boy Timsey, the aliens all took out their weapons. Although they knew that Hygen's strength was terrifying, they obviously did not want to be captured without a fight. Kuroto didn't pay any attention to these aliens. With just a thought, all the aliens except Hyde were sent flying by an invisible repulsive force and fell heavily to the ground. "You have no secrets in front of me." Saying that, Hygen's hand reached into the trembling body of Hyde, and directly used the giant Tenseigan's ability to take out Hyde's memory light ball and read it. Looking at the light ball in Hygen's hand that contained his past memories, Hyde was completely stunned. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 12:31. He took out my memory? Hyde was completely stunned. He could not imagine that there was such a powerful person in this world who could easily look through someone's memory with just a wave of his hand. In an instant, a bone-deep fear drowned him, and he could no longer think of resisting. Timsey, who was sent flying, immediately got up from the ground. He rushed towards Hygen and shouted, "Let go of Lord Hyde." Due to the stone of Greyer embedded in his body, and the large amount of chakra he obtained when the Greyer mineral vein above his head went out of control, he was in the best condition among all the non-humans and had the most chakra. Kuroto glanced at Timsey indifferently, and then once again activated Rain Wheel Pull, sending him flying away. "Idiot!" After a light snort, Hygen threw Hyde's memory ball in his hand. In an instant, the light sphere that recorded all of Hyde's past memories streaked across the air in an arc and landed on Timsey, who had fallen to the ground. Then, it slowly integrated into Timsey's body. Timsey was startled. Hyde's memories flashed through his mind. From Hyde's perspective, he saw the scene of his village being slaughtered by Hyde. Ignoring Timsey, who was in a daze on the ground, Kuroto raised his hand lightly and took the Book of Greyer from the storage bag on Hyde's waist. After going through Hyde's memory, Hygen found out that Hyde had such an ancient book with him. Obviously, Hyde learned everything about the Stone of Greyer through this ancient book. That was why he traveled across the ocean to find the mineral vein that produced the Stone of Greyer. He wanted to use the power of the Greyer mineral vein to fulfill his ambition of ruling the world. However, plans could never keep up with changes. Hyde thought that he was the one who played with people's hearts and manipulated everything behind the scenes. But after coming here, he realized that this world was completely different from what he imagined. With a plop, Hyde knelt on the ground. My lord, this Book of Greyer is for you. Please spare me." Hygen was not interested in talking to Hyde. He continued to read the Book of Greyer in his hand. The book recorded the origin of the Stone of Greyer in detail. From the creation of the crystal to the various ways of using it, almost every step was mentioned. At the same time, the book also mentioned that only those with royal blood were qualified to use the power of the Stone of Greyer. Kuroto naturally scoffed at this argument. The so-called royal bloodline can only use the power of the Stone of Greyer. As long as he ponders over it a little, he will be able to find the trick in it. This was because the cause and effect relationship was obviously reversed. It was not only royal blood that could use the Stone of Greyr. In ancient times, those who could adapt to the power of the Stone of Greyr used it to build an empire and became royal. The author who wrote the Book of Greyr was most likely from royal blood. That was why he intentionally reversed the cause and effect relationship and made it seem like the royal blood belonged to him. It's you. You killed my parents and massacred my village. At this time, the blonde Timsey stood up and looked at Hyde angrily. Hyde knew he could not hide it anymore, so he quickly yelled to the 3 female knights not far away, "Quick, kill him!" The 3 female knights who could mutate were Hyde's true accomplices. They had slaughtered villages and killed innocent people. Therefore, after receiving Hyde's order, they immediately pounced on the blonde teenager, Timsey. Timsey quickly yelled to the other heavily armored warriors, "We've all been fooled. There is no such thing as an ideal country. Hyde is the one who killed and looted." Soon, the group of non-humans started killing each other. The blonde young man with the Stone of Greyr embedded in his body was obviously more powerful than the female knight of Hyde. Soon, Hyde's accomplices were eliminated one by one. Then, Timsey walked to Hyde with his long sword in hand. Hyde panicked. He knelt on the ground and begged, "Timsey, for the sake of me taking you in, please spare me. You killed my parents and destroyed my village. How can I spare you?" Timsey clenched his teeth, but he could not swing his sword down. Obviously, although the young man was bent on revenge, his innocent personality made it difficult for him to be ruthless. Seeing an opportunity, Hyde's expression became ferocious. He suddenly transformed his body and reached out to stab Timsey's chest that was inlaid with the Stone of Greyr. Timsey turned pale with fright, but it was too late to dodge. He could only watch as the ferocious smile on Hyde's face gradually spread. Boom! Just as Hyde's hand was about to touch Timsey's chest, an invisible repulsive force sent both Hyde and Timsey flying. After Hyde's sneak attack was interrupted, Timsey no longer hesitated. He immediately swung his sword and stabbed at Hyde. In an instant, a surge of chakra gathered on Timsey's long sword, and like a torrent, it pierced through Hyde's body, completely beheading this ambitious alien. After taking revenge, Timsey threw away the sword in his hand and came to Hyegen. He bowed and said, "Thank you for your help just now." Hyegen closed the Book of Greyr in his hand and said calmly, "I'm not interested in your farce. I just want to know if you can control the ironclad warship on the ground." Timsey nodded quickly, "Yes." Hyegen said casually, "Okay, then you can help me move something. Consider it a favor." Timsey asked, "What do you want us to move for you?" Tenseigan smiled and immediately pointed to the Greyr mineral vein above his head that was exuding a bright halo. With his own ability, he could actually move the entire Greyr mineral load away. However, it would be too strenuous and eye-catching, and it would be easily discovered by other forces. Coincidentally, the giant iron-armored warship of the non-humankind was in the valley. If he could borrow the iron-armored warship of the non-humankind to transport the Greyr mineral vein to the sea where no one would ever travel, and then secretly transport it to the air fortress, it would save a lot of effort, and at the same time, he could hide it from the public. This is the reason why Tenseigan saved Timsey's life just now. Timsey was shocked when he heard that. Move the entire mineral load away? But how are we going to move it to the ground? That's not difficult at all. With a chuckle, Hyegen activated Rain Rui. While holding the Greyr mineral load above his head, he brought the surviving alien race to the ground with a series of roars. Third update, please recommend votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to all the students who tipped today. Thank you. Chapter 1232. Standing on the deck of the alien ironclad warship, Tenseigan was enjoying the sea breeze while maintaining the seal on the Greyr mineral vein. At this time, he secretly rejoiced that he had saved Tenseigan's life in the underground palace. Otherwise, it would not have been easy for him to move such a huge grayer mineral vein by himself. On the iron-armored warship, Tenseigan had already gotten rid of his companions who had been tricked by Hyde from the dissimulation device. It turned out that the burly, heavily armored foreign race warriors who had followed Hyde were all teenagers of the same age as Tenseigan. They had been transformed by Hyde's mechanical device. These teenagers, including Tenseigan, had been bewitched by Hyde's slogan of building a utopia. Without exception, they were all expendable for the ambitious Hyde. Out of curiosity, Tenseigan also studied the dissimulation device. It was not difficult for him to see that Hyde's dissimulation device was actually a kind of gene fusion device. Hyde collected some animal genes and forcefully fused them into a human body. This way, the human body would mutate and gain the abilities of an animal. Hyde himself and the 3 female foreign race knights who were his trusted subordinates were all products of this gene fusion. After understanding the principle, Tenseigan immediately lost interest in it. This kind of primitive and violent gene fusion was actually a kind of pollution to one's own genes. Even if one was lucky enough to survive the gene fusion, one would become a half-human, half-beast monster. Moreover, the gene fusion between different species was very unstable. One might be able to sleep well one night, but the next day, one would lose consciousness and memory, and become a beast. Therefore, Tenseigan did not care about this at all. At this time, Tenseigan came to the bridge. After looking at the grayer mineral vein, which was the size of a basketball court, he immediately looked away and said to Tenseigan respectfully, "Sir, we have now left the coast. Where are you going?" Tenseigan casually pointed at the sea in front of him. In fact, as long as he reached the remote area of the ocean, he could leave the ship at any time and meet up with the air fortress alone. Therefore, he did not have a specific destination. He only needed to go east, towards the depths of the sea. Tenseigan carefully identified the direction of Tenseigan's finger, then bowed to Tenseigan and said, "We will go in that direction." After saying that, Tenseigan informed his companions below and adjusted the direction of the iron-armored ship. Woo, with a low whistle, the iron-armored ship moved at full speed in the direction pointed by Tenseigan. The iron-armored ship was indeed a bit interesting. Not only could it travel on the sea, but it could also travel on the road. However, the shinobi world did not have similar technology. Tenseigan's air fortress that could float in the sky was far more difficult than this armored ship. It was just that the shinobi world focused more on the improvement of personal strength, so the development of machinery was far less than the iron-armored ship. After all, although these ironclad warships looked impressive, a single jade tail beast would be enough to destroy them if they encountered a tail beast. Soon, a day had passed. The speed of this iron-armored ship was much faster than the average passenger ship, so after a day of sailing, the iron-armored ship had passed through the waters of the land of water and entered the remote area of the sea. After confirming that there were no followers nearby with the Tenseigan, Tenseigan, who was sitting cross-legged on the bridge, slowly stood up. Tenseigan, who had been standing beside Tenseigan, hurriedly asked, "Sir, are you leaving?" "Yes." Tenseigan nodded, then activated rain wheel pull to lift the grayer mineral vein that had been placed on the bridge and slowly flew into the air. At this time, the alien teenagers on the iron-armored ship all came to the bridge and looked up at Tenseigan. Tenseigan looked down at Tenseigan, who was also looking up at him, and said, "Go back to your hometown. Although the utopia in your imagination does not exist, it does not prevent you from working hard for it." After saying that, Tenseigan did not look back and quickly disappeared into the sky with the grayer mineral vein. Looking at the direction where Tenseigan had gone, an alien teenager asked Tenseigan, "Tenseigan, can the utopia really be realized?" Tenseigan nodded heavily. "Since the sage wants us to work hard, then a utopia without disputes and killings will definitely be realized." "Yes, since the sage has said so, how can we give up so easily?" I didn't expect the sage to really exist in this world. We stayed with the sage for 2 whole days. With the words left by Hyojin before he left, the depressed alien teenagers suddenly regained their confidence and set foot on the voyage back to their hometown with full of energy. On the other side, Hyojin soon met up with the Sky Fortress that came to pick him up. Because the grayer mineral vein was too big, Hyojin had to temporarily put it on the top platform of the Sky Fortress. Fortunately, a lot of watchtowers and sculptures were removed during the renovation. Otherwise, this thing would not be able to be placed. Hyojin had a slight headache. The chakra reaction of the grayer mineral vein was too strong. If it was placed on the top of the Sky Fortress, it would be equivalent to turning on a spotlight for the Sky Fortress. Even if it could hide from the ninjas on land, it might not be able to hide from Otsutsuki samurai on the moon. Looks like I have to renovate the Sky Fortress again. After secretly making up his mind, Hyojin walked into the interior of the Sky Fortress. At this time, Xianglin, Gaara, and Ziyuan, who had been summoned by Hyojin from Mai, all came to greet him. Hyojin first looked at Xianglin up and down. After seeing that the chakra in Xianglin's body was stable and there was no tendency to lose control or go berserk, he moved his eyes to Ziyuan and asked casually, "Was the journey smooth?" He was going to pick up Ziyuan himself, but the grayer mineral vein suddenly appeared, so he had to order the Kazekage puppets of 3 generations to pick up Ziyuan. Ziyuan nodded, then asked curiously, "Sir, is this Sky Fortress also the base of the village? Here?" After a pause, Hyojin said, "This is my private base." Wow! Ziyuan let out a cry of surprise. Hyojin smiled, then waved his hand at Xianglin and Gaara. "You can leave." "Yes." Xiangli and Ilua bowed before respectfully retreating. After the 2 left, Ziyuan moved to Hyojin's side and whispered, "Sir, why does that red-haired girl have Rinnegan in her eye sockets? Put away your curiosity. Come with me to a place first." Hyojin rubbed Ziyuan's head and then walked toward the main power room. Ziyuan hurriedly followed him. Not long after, the 2 came to the main power room. As they approached the main power room, Ziyuan seemed to sense something. Her face suddenly changed, and she pointed to the power room in surprise. "Morio? Morio is inside?" First update, please recommend votes, monthly votes. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.